All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. All right. The July 28th Board of Directors meeting is called to order. First, I would like to ask our interpreter to explain how to access interpretation.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. So this is an announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, then cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, the 3 points, then the interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Este es un aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etcétera, presione los 3 puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccionar Mute Original Audio, que es silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo.
All right, thank you so much. With that, we will now start this meeting with a tribal acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region has historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups: the Kumeyaay, the Igueño, Luiseño, Copeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the flag which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Francesca, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. For the City of Carlsbad, Councilmember Burkholder.
Burkholder, present.
The City of Chula Vista is absent. The City of Coronado is also absent. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson.
Sure.
The City of Del Mar is absent. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
Here.
For the City of Encinitas, Mayor Kranz.
Here.
For the City of Escondido, Mayor White.
Present.
For the City of Imperial Beach, Councilmember Fisher.
Present.
For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Here.
For the City of Lemon Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Here.
For the City of National City, Vice Mayor Molina.
Present.
For the City of Oceanside, Deputy Mayor Keim. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Campillo. Oh, I'm sorry. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera.
Present.
For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Here.
For the City of Solana Beach, Second Vice Chair Hebner. For the City of Vista, Councilmember Melendez.
Present.
For Caltrans, Ann Fox. For Metropolitan Transit System, Deputy Mayor Leyva Gonzalez.
Here.
For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Here.
Imperial County is absent. For the U.S. Department of Defense, Musca Lake.
Here.
For the Port of San Diego, Commissioner Naranjo.
Here.
For the San Diego County Water Authority, Mel Katz. For the SDCRAA, Gil Cabrera.
Here.
Mexico is absent, and the SCTCA is also absent. That completes the roll call, and we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. We will begin with non-agenda public comments, and that is for public and member non-agenda public comments. Before we do that, though, a little bit of housekeeping. The public time for non-agenda public comment will be 1 minute in order to help us make sure we get through our agenda today. We're also going to make a few changes to the agenda to help with meeting management. The first is that we're going to push agency updates to the end of the agenda, and we will go straight into our consent agenda. We'll also be pulling item 5 from consent. I understand that staff has received several questions on this item, and we want to be sure the board has the information that we need. So we will take this item at a future meeting to make sure we have the proper time to review it. And then finally, per the request of the audit committee, we are also pulling item 11, and we'll be taking that at a later date as well. Francesca, let's go to non-agenda public comment.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the folks in the room. We'll start with Barry Pollard and then go to Truth.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Barry Pollard, and I am also the Executive Director of the Urban Collaborative Project, as well as one of the members of the Social Equity Working Group, an agency advisory group that SANDAG supports. What I'm here is that we represent communities from San Isidro all the way up to Vista, to El Cajon, as well as all the communities in between, one being southeastern San Diego. So we've been working on the regional plan, doing a lot of outreach into our communities. I'm here today because we need to start doing some outreach to you folks since you're going to be voting on it. Some of the issues that we have, of course, involves all across the board, lack of infrastructure. That's where the foundation starts. So we'll be making periodic sort of visits here, giving you all updates. And as we have been meeting over the last couple of years, what we started to do is we recognize what equity is and what equity isn't. And we're settling down in a couple of areas that I would like for you to consider.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
The regional plan is for the region. So the issue is going to be prioritizing.
So I'm sorry, we do need to move on
those
to the next
needs.
person. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Following Truth will be Alex Wong on Zoom. And just a reminder to the public comment period for this item is now closed. So our final speakers will be Alex Wong, Jimena Villaseñor Martinez, and Blair Beek. And Truth, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hey, it's Truth. I'm going to talk about the audit. AB 805 was corrupt Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher's baby. Oh, here we go. It's a good clip.
There's no conspiracy here. There's no conspiracy here.
So good, you got to repeat it twice. Here are the examples that make people distrust the conspiracy. CPS HR, who already worked with Nora at the county, was chosen as a consulting firm. Legal counsel is under Hassan's thumb, not independent. Nora got to choose who was essential to the conversation around the choice of a new auditor. Little to no further discussion was allowed from reps, questioning a very overtly tainted process. Info on the public member screening committee wasn't posted online until yesterday. Nora picked Ebony Shelton, who's under her county thumb, and today's audits items are shoved into the consent. There should have been a transparent vote, but instead we got conflicts of interest and layers like Nora said she didn't want, which is why Auditor Mary recommends amending AB 805's weighted vote. This is more akin to a hand-picked auditor, not an independent auditor. And it matches the corrupt, biased, weighted vote process very well.
Our next speaker will be Alex Wong, who will be followed by Jimena Villaseñor Martinez.
Maximize ridership, reduce emissions, and reduce traffic, San Diego's airport needs a people mover, not an airport trolley branch. The section between Santa Fe and Middletown is a bottleneck because both the green and blue lines share a track on the section. MTS proposes piggybacking an additional trolley branch on top of the existing blue and green lines between Santa Fe and Middletown to serve the airport. Problem is, this section has at best a capacity of 20 trains per hour. The blue and green lines need to have 8 trains per hour per direction, or 16 trains combined to provide 7.5-minute frequencies in Mission Valley and University City. Mission Valley and University City are rapidly densifying. Both communities need as much trolley frequency as possible. They need at least 16 trains per hour. That would leave the airport trolley only 4 trains per hour, translating to 15-minute frequencies. That's unacceptable. We need a driverless people mover linking downtown to the airport in order to provide the 4-minute frequencies that travelers in a hurry to the airport need. Mayor Gloria said that an airport transit link must run extremely frequently with at least 5-minute frequencies. That's not going to happen with an airport trolley branch.
I think our next speaker is Jimena, and Jimena will be followed by Blair Beekman.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce and speaking for a variety of industries and small, medium, and large employers in our region, we are proud to support the Cross-Border Trolley Project as a regional priority to enhance cross-border mobility. Our region is home to one of the busiest land ports of entry in the world, with nearly 58,000 people crossing the border to work each day. In fact, the San Isidro Port of Entry alone processes up to 70,000 passenger vehicles and 25,000 pedestrians each day. However, border wait times continue to be an important challenge, with passenger vehicles waiting up to 4 hours. So as part of our efforts towards an efficient, secure, and reliable border, we recommend SANDAG's board to continue taking coordinated and ambitious measures in leveraging binational leadership to deem the project as a regional priority and significantly improve the quality of life for our Kaalmada community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker on this item will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thank you for taking public comment today, this morning at this time. I think I just want to offer my usual reminder of the importance that as the drivers have come back on in a lot of ways, that we can practice, morale issues. And I think ways to do that is to improve service, frequency of service that creates a more regular times that buses can arrive, and also creates a faster sense of service. People can step onto a bus every 10 minutes, knowing that it gives a lot of comfort and develops a lot of good practices as a community process. Good luck on how to work on that in the next few years and really consider it. Thank you.
That concludes the non-agenda public comments.
All right, thank you so much. We will now go to member non-agenda comments. I know Commissioner Naranjo has some comments. We're going to ask that members limit their non-agenda comments to 3 minutes just to ensure that we stay on track to get through our agenda. Ms. Naranjo?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Good morning. I am Vice Chair Sandy Naranjo for the Port of San Diego, and I just wanted to take this moment to share exciting updates going on at the port. We've been hitting the media talking about the cranes. We are home to the first all-electric battery-supported mobile harbor cranes. We replaced the most polluting cranes in our terminal, and now we're the first one in North America to have this. Second, we at the port, we provided $400,000 to the upcoming free rides around National City, also called FRANK, via the port's Maritime Industrial Impact Fund. It is proposed to be a neighborhood electric vehicle shuttle system, and it will provide a clean and safe travel option, improving quality of life by expanding affordable travel options while improving air quality and public health. We also have Pepper Park improvements. The port will be upgrading Pepper Park. There will be new amenities and landscaping, and this will be added next year. And there will be a future 2.5 expansion of the park. This park will also have the first splash pads on the port's tie-ins. And last but not least, we'll be hosting a community meeting. We're going to have Spanish interpreters, Tagalog interpreters, and we're going to be celebrating all the investments that we're doing to transition our port to be inclusive for everyone, optimizing industrial, commercial, and recreational. So I'm inviting all of you so we can come and celebrate. It will be great food, great people, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you for the update. The system is not working right now. So are there any other members who'd like to make non-agenda comment? And again, if we could limit to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a slide to share to support my public comment. And it says I can't start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So that I have to be enabled to screen share. All right. So I'll talk about, the slide is only for the very last bit of my comment. So on Monday of this week, there we are. Okay. On Monday of this week, the SANDAG staff very bravely came to, so I'm sharing now. Is it up? Great. So the SANDAG staff in the form of Danny and Brandy came to Del Mar and gave a 6-slide update or overview, really. This was the first public meeting in Del Mar of the process that we will go through to look at up to 5 alignments environmentally and geologically between now and 2026, which will include doing design work sufficient to do that environmental study and the geological study, with construction aimed to start in 2028 on whichever alignment. So these are the 5 alignments. I put these up here to remind this board of what they are. The chambers were full. They were overflowing. A meeting that everyone expected, including me, to take about 15 minutes was 2 hours. There were many, many questions, and I invite anyone on the board to take a look at the video of our council meeting to hear the questions that people had to ask. Many questions pointed to this April 2021 matrix. And what you'll see in this matrix is the 5 alignments across as columns, and then the evaluation criteria, weights established for these criteria, and then scores of 1 through 5, with 5 being the best, assigned to each alignment for each criteria. And something that came up over and over was, why is the I-5 not being planned to be studied as an alternative alignment? How were all these 1s assigned? Well, when this matrix was shown to the Del Mar City Council in April of 2021, long before most people in this room right now were even here, Lisa was here, I was here, Del Mar was not included in the assignment of the weights and the assignment of the scores. We were not part of that conversation. And what we heard loud and clear from the people on Monday was, please tell us at the very least why all these low scores, 1s and 2s, were assigned for each of these criteria for I-5. And given that I-5 is the only one of the 5 alignments that doesn't go underneath Del Mar, underneath the commute of Del Mar Road, the only one that doesn't go through what are potentially fragile limestone formations, maybe we should keep the I-5 under study as we move forward, at least for the next year. And at the very, very least, let's let the people know where we got the 1s through 5s and where we got the weights in this matrix. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gasterlin, and staff will be following up with you after the meeting. Are there any additional member non-agenda comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to now move to our consent agenda. As a reminder, and I think we probably should be a little more accurate with our language. We're not just pulling item 5, we're returning that to staff. So it won't be a separate discussion today. It'll be returned to staff to come back at a different date. We'll be doing the same thing with item 11. So items 5 and 11 are returned to staff. We will now move to the consent agenda minus items 5 and 11. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? Do you want to have them separate for discussion and a separate vote, or do you want, okay. And would
that would be item 8. That would be item 8, 9, and 10 that I'd like to pull, Chair.
Okay,
Please.
So those will be put on the back end of the agenda. And I will be honest, there's no guarantee that we will get to those items today if they are pulled from consent, just being realistic in terms of meeting management and our ability to maintain quorum. Are you still comfortable with that?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, all right. All right, with that, do we have any public comment on the consent agenda?
Thank you, Chair. We do. We'll start with Truth in the room, who will be followed by Blair Beekman, and Blair will be our final commenter on consent.
So 8, 9, and 10 are not included, huh? Okay. Well, I could just take my time then, I guess. So this is the People Mover Truth, and item 7A. It's 140 million for an Otay Mesa border crossing with tracking systems and tolls to benefit big industry and big government by harnessing human capital of both Americans and Mexicans. And it's not going to help the wait times, because the people that have money are going to be able to pay that toll to use it. And you know that. Let's see, item 12. We got 7 cases of fraud, waste, and abuse open. One is about abuse of authority. I wonder who that could be. Item 12. Item 14. There's money for Stack and Packs and Santee, and maybe those digital tracking kiosks in downtown for Sean. And we have item 13. This is a fun one. Ray Major. He said before that he's one of the last surviving male employees here at SANDAG. Isn't that interesting? I'm still going to hold this up for Nora because I don't like item 8. I'm still going to say, this is what I think about it. That's all I think about it. That's all it is.
Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, Blair.
Sorry about
Yeah, hi. Blair Beekman, to speak on proposed regional bikeway budget program, budget amendments. There's sometimes a disconnect in how to talk about bike programs from in South County compared to North County or Central County. Good luck how to make connections, good connections with the different areas and how they talk about bike issues. It's important to have bike programs in South County. Good luck in those efforts to do it well. And to offer an item, state infrastructure investments around the Otay Mesa area. Good luck, a really interesting, good project. Good luck how to talk about tech accountability issues at the border, I think is a very interesting concept. And good luck how to develop good practices and programs with that. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on consent.
All right, with that, we will begin discussion of our consent agenda. Again, items 8, 9, and 10 have been pulled per the request of Mayor Jones and moved to the back end of today's agenda. We've also returned items 5 and 11 to staff. Do we have any requests to speak to the consent agenda?
Move approval of the remaining items on consent.
All right, we've got a motion to approve from Mayor Huebner. Where was our second?
Right here, second.
Thank you, Mayor Vasquez. All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. With that, let's call the roll, please.
And that motion passes unanimously.
All right, great. We will now move to item 15, the 2025 regional plan. Can we introduce this item, please? I'm happy to do it. All right.
So this is again a series in the workshops that we're having with you with respect to the regional plan. And I think one of the assets that SANDAG has is the tremendous amount of data that we have available that really helps us do our planning here at the agency. So today what we're going to do is give you an overview of the data that's used to help develop the plan, and then share with you how that data is used then to develop the actual transportation projects and the transportation network that becomes part of the regional plan. So we're going to have a brief presentation here, and then as we've been doing, we're going to go over into conference room 7 and break you up into groups to have the discussion with 2 staff members at each of your tables. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cindy Burke to start with the data-driven planning.
Dr. Burke and Thierry, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. We're pleased to be here with you as we have our 5th regional plan workshop. As we look into the future, we know that to plan effectively, we need to consider how the region will look and change over time, and to use the best and most accurate data we can. Could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, there's the. Okay. So I'll be sharing with you a high-level overview of our current Series 15 regional forecast, which is used as a key input for our transportation model that helps us understand the effect of our policies, programs, and projects on the region and how we get around it. And our forecast is also used by your jurisdictions for general plan updates and capital facilities planning, as well as other agencies such as San Diego County Water Authority and San Diego Regional Energy Office to develop plans for resource allocation and infrastructure development decisions. So what is the region going to look like in the future? First, we're going to see that the region's population will increase for the next 2 decades, but then it's going to decrease for the last 2, with only around 40,000 more people in the region in 2060 today than we have today. This has obvious implications as we think about how we meet the needs for a growing population in the short term, but then have flexibility as it decreases. Second, our population will be getting older. I presented this to our regional stakeholders and I said our parks may need more pickleball courts than play structures by 2060. While 1 in 10 of our residents were over the age of 65 in 2000, this ratio will increase to around 1 in 4 by 2060. This also translates to a number of policy implications from what type of services our residents may need, the transportation choices that they make, the types of trips they may need to make with fewer school-age children, and also the type of housing that might be needed. And then in addition, while the population is forecast to eventually decline, older individuals are more likely to live alone than younger people. Younger people may live with their families, may have roommates. And so this will have an effect on the housing that we need, especially as we work to catch up with pent-up demand. Because the population will be declining and getting older, the type of housing needed may change. There may be more construction needs related to renovation in our later years rather than building new units by 2060. And then while we project that the number of people in the region will eventually decrease, we see continued growth in the number of jobs we're going to have in the region, which reflects in part labor force participation rates increasing for older individuals, as well as individuals having more than one job and individuals coming outside San Diego County or living elsewhere and holding jobs in San Diego County. So how do we come up with these projections? Our forecast uses a model to predict likely future population, housing, and job growth numbers based on the consideration of a variety of factors, including historical trends. We also have expert input through a series of peer review panels, as well as comparing our assumptions and predictions to other models, including those used by other MPOs in California, as well as the Department of Finance or DOF. We need to be within a certain percentage of those projections, which were just updated last week. We update our forecast every 4 years. So the last time we did this was Series 14 for the 2021 regional plan. And you'll see that the data I share with you on the next slide goes out till 2060. Our regional plan will only go out till 2050 though. So our population forecast reflects assumptions regarding births, deaths, and net migration. And we're expecting to see fewer births, especially as the older age population does not have children at the same rate. We have a fertility rate of 1.4. We'll see more deaths and then flat migration, which translates into a smaller population in the future. Our housing model starts with existing housing stock, excluding group quarters, and considers how many are occupied, what the vacancy rate is for owned and rented properties, how many are unavailable because they are vacation homes or used for short-term rentals, and what the household formation rate is expected to be. Again, how many people are heads of household. And then finally, our job forecast, you'll see that our Series 15 numbers look very different from our Series 14, which was used for the 2021 plan. This reflects an improved methodology that includes more comprehensive data about non-wage and salary workers, such as real estate agents, Uber drivers, those gig people who may not be filing the standard tax form, as well as wage and salary workers to better account for the different types of jobs in the region. So before I turn it over to Tori, I'd like to show you the historic and projected numbers for the San Diego region on this slide. So between 1980 and 2000, for context, we added 1 million people to the region. And in the last 20 years, we added another 500,000. In the next 20 years, we forecast that we will only grow by about 140,000 individuals and that the population will peak in 2042 at 3.4 million. After that, we'll experience a slow decline as the region loses nearly 100,000 residents by the end of the forecast in 2060. For housing stock, you can see that the orange line is flatter than the green, showing how our housing has not historically kept up with population growth. Considering the change in our population and this pent-up demand, we estimate in the next 20 years, our region will need to build around an additional 175,000 units, with this number declining to around 28,000 in the second half of our forecast, assuming demand is met. And finally, our job numbers are being updated with updated population projections released late last week by DOF. But our current forecast shows that the number of jobs in the region, as I mentioned earlier, will continue to grow even past 2050. Considering where our employment centers are, how the number of workers in different sectors need to get to work and when, as well as rates of teleworking will also be factors as we use data in the preparation for the 2025 regional plan. Moving forward, my team is currently working compiling your jurisdiction's land use and general plan information, as well as inputs as we work on sub-regional forecast that will be shared with you later this year. I know that's going to be a topic of a lot of interest by those at this table. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ari, who will be discussing transportation network refinement and sharing more examples of how the planning team is using these data as well as others.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. So good morning. I am going to be talking to you, and you just heard our Deputy CEO Colleen mention that when we develop the regional plan, it is very much focused on a data-driven planning effort. And so I'm going to explain at a pretty high level some of the data that we use and provide a few examples as to how we use that when we're going through the process, as well as how we're making our project selections. So in your prior meetings, you've heard staff come and talk to you about there's a lot of different federal and state requirements when we're developing a regional plan. And one of those requirements is that we need to be able to use the most current data and information that's available to us. And so our amazing data science team that Dr. Burke here is here representing, they take the time to update information like the forecast that she just talked about, as well as all of our modeling tools, and provide us with a lot of other information. And our team is able to use all of that information as part of our baseline efforts to help begin the process for updating the regional plan. So when we start with that process, we begin with looking at what was currently proposed in our currently adopted regional plan and all of the work that's been done since that plan's adoption. And then, for example, we also look at all of the work that's been done. And so part of that is looking at all of the work that we've done on quarter plans. We've completed 5 quarter plans since we've had our last regional plan adopted. A lot of your local jurisdictions have been making community plan updates or updating different parts and elements of your general plan. And so all of those studies and the priorities that you have within those plans are things that we take into consideration and that we evaluate as we're moving through our process and updating the plan itself. And then we also look at what are the goals and the things that you have in some of your local plans and in some of those quarter plans as to how they align with the goals within our regional plan. We also, once we understand where those priorities are, where the goals are going, and taking all of this information, we then like to take all of the feedback that we're hearing from you, from the community, as well as from our stakeholders, and we begin to put that together in forming some of our networks. And then we begin to do testing, and we call this here, as it's highlighted here, as sensitivity testing. And this really helps us to understand the projects and the policies that we're putting forward. How are they helping us to meet some of our legal requirements that you've heard us talk about before related to reducing BMT, vehicle miles travel, as well as reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then in addition to network testing, we also look at the quarter level and try and really understand how are our networks performing at the quarter level, and are we able to achieve the goals that we brought forward to you earlier in some of your workshops, and some of the things that we know we're trying to do regionally as well as at the local level. And once we're done with all of that process, again, throughout this entire process, we do take into consideration all of the board, stakeholder, and community feedback, and we put that together in an initial concept for which through this 2025 update, we're planning to bring that to you this fall. So I mentioned the sensitivity testing and testing of our networks. And this slide here is just an example of how we go through that process and showing you some of the things that we test. And so again, when we're doing the sensitivity testing and we're trying to understand how do the networks and the policy changes that we're putting forward, how do they help us to meet all of our legal requirements, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions or hitting any of our goals that we've outlined for ourselves. So this slide here shows an example of transit sensitivity testing. And what we're seeing is that when you look at this slide, you can see things such as more frequent transit service. So this is if we were providing buses or trolley or trains every 10 minutes or so, we really start to see an increase in the number of riders that are on those services, as well as we start to see a decrease in the amount of miles that people are traveling throughout the region. And if we do other things such as, having the buses or the trolleys come faster, or reducing the amount of time that people are getting on and off of those buses, those things also help us in being able to meet some of those legal requirements. So this is just showing example of things that we test related to transit. We do this testing for a lot of different things, and we also do it for our roadways and understanding if we propose managed lanes, what does the results show us, or even if we're looking at changing the HOV requirements on those roads. So again, this is information that's very helpful to the planning team as we're starting to make decisions, as we're pulling together all of the information related to our network. Okay, so there are two maps here on this slide, and I'm going to explain how we use the data related to both of these. So the map here on your left is looking at employment center information as well as population. The yellow dots are representing population all throughout the county or our region. And then the purple blue outlines are looking at our tier 1 and tier 2 employment centers. So we still do use as an important data part of our plan development, looking at where people are living as well as where people are working. And you can see here where all of the yellow dots, not everyone lives, in the same locations as where the employment centers are. And even if you do see the dots overlapping with a lot of the employment centers, it doesn't necessarily mean that you live and work in the employment center that's closest to you. So we still need to make sure that we're looking at our plan and how we can accommodate for those commute trips that people are taking, which tend to be some of the longest trips that they're taking. And particularly when you've heard some of us on our prior presentations and we look at the employment centers, our two largest employment centers are Sereno Valley and Kearney Mesa, which are kind of in the center there of the map highlighted in purple. And we see that a lot of the trips that are heading to those locations are some of the longest ones throughout our region. So we do look at where people live and where they work, and that continues to be an important part of our data. And then while we do have updated telework information that our data science team has been collecting, one of the things that we are seeing is that there is an increase in telework. So we are seeing that there's an increase in that, but we're also seeing that while there is that increase, there's still a lot of people who are going to the office multiple times a week. And we still have a lot of jobs in our region that are just simply not able to be done remotely. So it's still important for us to think about employment centers and where people are working and how to make sure we can provide options for them to get there. And then the map here on your right, this map is related to short trips that are happening within the region. And these are trips that are typically less than 4 miles. So when we're not commuting to and from work, these are most of the trips that we're taking. These are going to the grocery store, going to the bank or to the doctor's office, all of your basic needs. And so when you're looking at the map, the purple, the darker the purple and the deeper the purple, those are where we have a high concentration of those short trips happening. So when we're looking at this data, we look for opportunities if there are solutions that we can begin to offer in those places where we have a lot of concentration of high short trips, to be able to provide options where people can feel safe to bike or walk, or even be able to deploy flexible fleets such as your neighborhood electric vehicles to help facilitate all of those short trips of travel. So this is the kind of information that we use in relation to where people live and work, as well as looking at short trips that are happening throughout the region. And then finally, we also look at traffic volumes. And what you're seeing here on this map, the lines in blue are representative of existing traffic volumes. The thicker the line means the more traffic that you'll see on those corridors. And I'm sure it's not a surprise if any of you have traveled, particularly in our peak hours, that there is a lot of congestion on the Interstate 5, 805, 15, or even Interstate 8. And those are some of the lines that you see here that are the thickest here. And when we're looking at this data, what it tells us is that we need to be able to identify solutions on those corridors. And just like Dr. Berg talked about, looking at growth within the region's population and understanding the number of jobs, we also look at how does that reflect and impact the traffic volumes that are within our corridors and how we might form solutions to help that. And so when we were developing the 2021 regional plan, we were estimating that there was going to be a lot of traffic growth within the region. And so you can see the purple lines here, just kind of showing how we were expecting, in addition to existing traffic volumes, that we were going to see a substantial amount of increase in traffic on all of our corridors throughout the county. And then, as I said earlier in the presentation, part of a plan's development is to look at current and updated information. And so now that we have new updated information, we're looking at all of this again. And what we're seeing is that while we do expect to see additional growth within the region, we're not expecting it to be as much as we previously proposed in our prior plans. And so that's a new data point that we're looking at. And what this means to us is that we need to go back and look at things such as our managed lanes and really evaluate what we proposed still the most appropriate way to address traffic on these corridors moving forward. So that concludes our data-driven planning presentation. We're going to have a lot more information that we'll share with you at the sub-regional level as part of your workshop. And I'd like to turn it back over to our Vice Chair for public comments.
Thank you, Dr. Burke and Tueri. Do we have public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do have public comment. We'll start with Truth in the room, and then we have 3 public commenters online. We'll start with the person with the phone number ending in 899.
Uh-oh, here we go. Can I start over? Since it wasn't on the mic. Should be fair to me. Okay. Thank you. So let's start again. What a bleak future. This is exactly why I'm forced to speak at meetings even twice in a row. Data-driven deception for the rigged regional plan. Because it's so deceptive to say the number of jobs will be higher when very few of those jobs will be full-time or pay anyone's bills with increasing minimum wage and inflation. But that's also why the slides say people will be working longer. Yeah, no kidding. We'll be dying sooner too from being overworked and underpaid, which is part of why the population is projected to decrease by 2042. Two other big reasons, childish adults, and the biggest is those deadly COVID clot shots dropping like flies. And shorter boarding times, faster travel times, and more frequent transit. Quit dreaming. Disabled people aren't going to board faster. There's not going to be a bullet train, and money won't create more workers. This regional plan is a non-starter. So let me give an early thumbs down, but thumbs up if you agree that this whole system is nothing but dysfunctional. That's what I've seen, especially with the audit. I don't like any of it. And this future, I mean, something needs to change in society. It's horrible.
Our next speaker will be the person with the phone number ending in 899, followed by Corinna Contreras.
Hi, Mary Davis calling in to advocate for many in East County with my 4 wish list projects as you move forward on the 2025 data-driven regional plan. Number 4 would be what I call the 52 skidoo in and out of Santee that creates a choke point in and out, and so please fix that. Number 3 would be what I call Mr. Toad's Wild Off-Ramp. That's southbound 125 to the eastbound 94 connector where you have to get off at Spring Street. I understand there's a delay, but again, please prioritize this. Number 2 is actually my personal pain point, what I refer to as Breaking Bad, the 8 and 67 transition connectors, or as I like to refer to it, the rear ender, fender bender, brake slamming, bumper ramming, Walter White knuckle ride of East County. Many accidents, that'll be my next public records request. And number 1 for safety, for regional safety, the second-rate fire escape, the State Route 67. Please concentrate on fire evacuation, lane widening, and vehicular safety, and put the active transportation on the back.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Corinna Contreras, who will be followed by Blair Beekman.
Hello, my name is Corinna Contreras, transportation policy advocate for Climate Action Campaign. Climate Action Campaign believes that all people throughout the San Diego region deserve the freedom of mobility. A regional multimodal transportation network will increase freedom of mobility. It will help us slash carbon emissions, leading to a healthier and more sustainable San Diego. To do this, we need to increase safer walking, biking, and rolling infrastructure for all residents in a just and equitable manner. Active transportation needs to be 25% of the next plan if we are to meet our mandated climate targets. We know active transportation is the best way to reach our climate targets in a healthy, safe, and equitable way. Thank you.
I think our final speaker on this item will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Blair Beekman here. It was nice to hear there was comment on the future of faster transportation service, more rapid service. Thank you. Yeah, I think San Diego has a great potential to do that sort of program. It was really nice to hear. Thank you. I also wanted to offer that on the north part of I-5 by the San Onofre nuclear power plant, it's kind of a dead zone in there. It's a superstitious zone. Weird events happen in that area. I don't know why. A lot of weird car accidents and such. It would be interesting to maybe create different modes of transportation through that area, like bicycles, pedestrian paths and stuff, to possibly help get out the voodoo of that area. I just thought I'd mention it this time. And thanks a lot for looking into the future of faster service with more frequent service. Thank you.
Chair, that concludes the public comments on this item.
All right. Thank you so much. Tueri, I know you'll be giving us some directions before we head to the other room. If you can provide those directions, then we have at least one request to speak from a board member. We've got 2 before we head over there. Why don't we do this? We'll take the member comments. I'll ask that those be limited to 2 minutes or less. Again, so we can get into the exercise and there'll be plenty of conversation over there. And Tueri, you can give us our directions once we get over to the room. We'll begin with Councilmember Shu.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me make a comment before we go into the other room. I have some real concerns about our planning process. This issue of looking at population growth, demands, congestion is the way previous transportation plans have been used developed, and it's caused a lot of disparity and issues in our communities. So the data points that I hope we may look for in the future, and I'm not asking for us to have this today going into this workshop, is to look at the funding in the past and look at the funding equity issues, to look at who pays for what, when, and where, because I think there are some funding disparities by people, or by communities. Also to look at, I suggested that years ago, that we look at the cost of transportation and housing together as a percentage of family income to identify which communities that need help. Because we know when those two costs go above 50% and approach 70%, those communities are in real despair and need assistance, and both in housing and transportation. And lastly, we have maps that show this health disparity throughout our region. We should be using those maps to guide us in terms of which areas need prioritization in terms of transportation assistance that does not pollute those communities. And I hope we start using those maps besides the maps of showing, where there's congestion. That's the way we've been doing things in the past, and it's causing more health impacts. And lastly, if the population is getting older people like me are going to be affected by those health effects. So that's why I want to take care of them even faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shu. We'll now go to Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. So I just have a couple of questions. One of them is specifically on this item. So I received an email last night at 6:30, which I was done working for the day at 6:30. And it had two notes made, which was items 8 and item 11. There were changes to them or updates to them. Though after watching the PowerPoint today, there's actually 5 slides added to item number 15, but there's no notation of that. And then, so for transparency, I feel like I'm not prepared for this meeting. I'm not very happy about it. There's also an attachment to item number 16 that there's no notation that there is actually an update to that item as well. So if we're trying to be transparent, I don't feel like I'm feeling like anything's transparent right now today. And I would just like to know, why are we making changes at the last minute, not making note of it? And why is this happening? And it's not something that just started today. This is something that continuously continues to happen. And then specifically about item number 11, I think that's the one that we pulled. When was that decision made? Because we didn't even find out.
For Brown Act purposes, we're going to stick to the discussion of this item. We're on item 15.
Okay.
It's important that we do that. As I mentioned, we've moved the items that were requested to be, we had items returned to staff, and then we pulled items for the back end of the agenda. Happy to discuss those when we're outside of item 15, but we're in item 15. And for Brown Act purposes, I think it's important for us to stay on topic.
Thank you, Chair. Then specifically on item 15, when we added those 5 slides, why was there no notation of that? And when did that happen?
Does staff have a response?
Yeah, I have. Mayor Jones, we always try to give you the best information possible. So we make changes. When and how, that I cannot tell you. Maybe the staff will tell you, but none of the changes is something that changes the substance of what the staff presented to you today. But we make changes all the time. And Colleen, if you want to add to that.
I think it's an excellent question, Mayor Jones. And what ends up happening as we go and talk with each of you doing the briefings, we recognize that there's a lot of questions that come up during those briefings. And so then we think, okay, these are probably some things then we should add to the presentation so you have that information. So a lot of times we do make modifications to the presentation before we actually give it to you from the one that gets posted, say, on the Friday before the meeting or the Monday. As we do the briefings, we had a lot of questions about how do the managed lanes work. And so that's why we came up with that slide that kind of showed the swelling of when, there's more traffic in particular areas. So really, these are in response to the questions that we receive from all of you during the briefings.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification, but specifically on item number 15, there were 5 slides that were added, but there was no notation of that to any of us. I didn't see anything. I mean, was an email sent out that I possibly missed that said, hey, just so you know, item 15, we've clarified, we've actually added information that we know you need to be prepared for. But I don't even think it should come at 6:30 the night before. Personally, I don't know. Can I see who all saw that there were 5 slides added to this item? I feel like this is not professional. I don't know who's responsible, but
So, Mayor responsible, Mayor Jones, and I said, we brief you before the meeting and we take your input seriously. We make changes as we see appropriate. I am responsible. And if somebody didn't like the changes, they can bring it up. But nothing with none of the changes that were made any change to the substance of what we're presenting to you. If we're just going to make a point about changes, yes, we make changes. That's why we get paid to make changes, so you are informed when you make decisions.
well, thank you, Mr. Okada. But I would say definitely if you've made a change, there's a different question that might come up into my mind. I was frantically looking and trying to figure out where is this slide? And I'm not holding you responsible because obviously it's not your fault. But if we're making a change, should the board not be notified that there is a change to the presentation so that we're able to prepare before we actually are sitting here?
So I'll just request that in the future, when changes have been made after the briefings, that it either be noted or communicated to the board. I know that oftentimes my feedback during my briefings, I get information, I ask questions, and then I provide feedback on how it might be better communicated in such a way that would not require such a long back and forth for me to understand what is being presented. And then those changes are incorporated, which I typically appreciate. And I know that from my understanding, staff is doing much more to try to brief the board in advance of meetings in order to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions ahead of time and refine the presentation in such a way that produces the most effective conversation possible here. So sounds like staff is open to committing to providing notifications to the board when changes have been made to the presentation. Mayor Jones, do you have any additional questions or comments on item 15?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, we go to Councilmember Burkholder.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if my thing was working, so appreciate that, Chair. Given this new information, I did have a question on, I think it's slide number 5, where you talk about SR 15 regional forecast. And my question is, historically, have you gone and looked about what you have forecasted previously to determine if you've hit those markers? This would have been something that would have been important before seeing right now. So I'm just trying to get historical feedback from you guys.
So the short answer for that, and happy to talk with you more about this, is that every year we try to take the best information that we can, and there's no forecast that's ever going to be 100% perfect. We didn't see COVID happening, for example, and the migration that happened to move out of California. So we never actually go back because we're busy trying to look to the future, and again, using the best data that we can have. And as I indicated in terms of our methodology, we're looking at what the other NPOs are doing, Department of Finance. The numbers that just came out from DOF showed a big reduction from what they had done previously because of the trends that had changed in terms of, again, the birth, deaths with COVID, as well as deaths of despair, and then the migration of people going out. So when we have limited resources, I wouldn't say that that's the best use of our resources to go back and check that. Again, we want to keep making sure we're doing the best we can moving forward.
Councilmember Burkholder, we do take a look at the historical forecasts. And in addition to what Cindy was saying, we look historically to see how well we've been doing. And typically our forecasts have been very aggressive or optimistic in terms of the number of people that will be moving to this region. So we've been overestimating if you take a look at the past forecast. But the driving force to our forecast is the control total that we get from the state of California. So by law, we have to be within a certain percentage of the Department of Finance forecast. And so they give us the control total numbers. And then what we do is based upon that population, we then figure out how many jobs, housing units, et cetera, are going to happen because we have that population. So they do a state level forecast. And as Dr. Burke was pointing out, this is the first time ever where we have decreasing population in California. So it has significant impacts in the long run. Every other forecast that we've gotten had these huge increases, having the San Diego region grow to about 4 million people by the year 2050. That was typically what we were looking at. And now we're looking at an extra 40,000 people or so, 140 by 2042. So that's taking us to about 3.4 million. So significantly less. And that's going to have ramifications throughout the sub-regional allocations too, which is the next step, which is what we're going to be working on with your cities. We're going to sit down and talk about what does this mean in terms of having this reduced population growth to the region? What does that do to housing, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you. That's primarily what I was getting at, is that the RENA numbers should be reflected moving forward, that if there's a population decrease, then cities like Carlsbad, like mine, shouldn't be absorbing so many people. So thank you, or housing numbers rather. So thank you, Mr. Major.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Burkholder. We will now go to Councilmember Castro. Yep. So just so you know who's, that way folks know who's in the queue. We've got Del Mar, Encinitas, Solana Beach, Santee, and Coronado all in the queue. Councilmember Gastrolin.
Cindy, thank you so much. Slide 5 up. I can't quite tell. Could you bring up slide 5? 5. We can't, when we sit here, we can't see anything, so we're relying on my laptop. Okay, so this slide is kind of the heart of a lot of the drivers, with the population peaking and going down a little bit. And you'll notice in 2060, the population and the jobs coming closer. So when I see trends like that, my very first instinct is take ratios. What is the population per job? What's the jobs per house? And what's the population per house? And I did that while you were talking. So what's really, and I sent it to Colleen. So what's really interesting here is those ratios are actually holding really steady, except for the population per home, which goes to Councilmember Burkholder's comment. In 2022, we have 1.5 people per, let's see, so per home. We have 2.65 people per home, and we go down to 2.3. And that's actually, so that degree of change becomes interesting. The population per job is the biggest change, and that's 1.5 people per job to 1.4 people per job, which isn't that big a change, but when you're talking about millions, it is a big change. So my question for you, first, I'll observe that the aging population probably explains some of these trends, but the big question is, what about those jobs, those people holding jobs from the outside? How do you determine in 2060, some proportion of jobs will be held by people from elsewhere? Is that simply a projection of the current trends that you're seeing, or is that based on something firm?
So we have our economist who worked on that, and I know Ray is here also to speak more specifically about that. In the general, we're looking at the again, this is really different because looking at that non-wage salary, we take into account telecommuting, people holding more than one job, the longer labor force participation rates. And we're looking at the counties surrounding us, and would those people be coming in to fill those jobs, or could there be jobs that are filled by telecommuting?
Okay. Yeah. So the telecommuting jobs becomes really interesting, because if the job is here and somebody's telecommuting, then they don't need to drive at all. We don't need housing units for them. They're not counted as our population. So I think there may be more behind this there probably is. And what you've done is shown us a fairly simplified view, perhaps.
No, definitely. And as we get into the sub-regional allocations, and we definitely are working very closely with your jurisdictions to make sure we have the best up-to-date information. As I indicated, 2022 is our base year for this. A lot's changed from 2016, which was our base year for 2021. So we definitely want to work closely with you to consider what is this whole story, what's the picture, and how do we do our best job to use data to make the best policy decisions we can.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Guessman, the nature of jobs has significantly changed in the last 20 years. And historically here at SANDAG, we looked only at wage and salary jobs. So those were the jobs that were you were working for somebody and then you were filing taxes. But many, many people now work for themselves or independently employed. And that includes things like real estate agents. It includes people who are driving for Uber, Lyft, those type of the gig economy is changing. If you have an Amazon site and you're generating revenue from that, that's your job, your primary job. And so because the nature of jobs have changed, we've started to take that into account in our forecast. And that's what you're seeing here. In addition to that, with the aging population has a lot to do with this too. And our forecast shows that people are going to have to work longer to be able to, and they're living longer too, but you're not going to see people retiring as early as they did in the past. In fact, many of the trends that we see now is that a lot of people are coming back into the workforce just because of inflation right now. They're not able to support themselves. So we take those things into consideration. And in terms of the jobs that are coming, that are teleworking, that is going to be a trend that we really see in the Series 16 forecast, because there are two components. There are the people who live in San Diego, but they're going to be working elsewhere. And then there are people who are going to be working in San Diego and they live elsewhere. So we have to figure that out as a component. But just like Uber and Lyft the last time, we didn't have enough data to really calculate that. We understand it's a trend that we'll be following, and we'll be making that adjustment probably in the next series.
So perhaps breaking the population line into two, those who work at home and telecommute versus those who actually change their location. And same with the jobs that are effectively virtual versus the jobs that require moving physically from one place to another. So we'll have 5 lines.
Just a quick question. Where are we right now in terms of our supply of housing versus population? My understanding is we're at a deficit. And what is that deficit?
So currently we're probably, from our calculations, almost 100,000 units short in the region. So about 70,000 units of backlog just because we're not building fast enough to keep up with the population growth in the last 10 years. And then about 30,000 units that we look at in terms of being either second homes that are not occupied or rental properties like VBROs and Airbnbs. And so probably 100,000 units short in the region.
Thank you. All right, we've got Solana Beach, Santee, Coronado, and then Encinitas.
Thank you. And I'm keeping on the jobs topic. Appreciate all of your work. And I know that you're going to be working with our cities to get a little bit more, fine look at it. But my interest is in when you refer to the phrase employment centers. I noticed that in my small city, there's a couple of dots. We don't have a tier box around us or anything, but I know that the type of jobs that we have are retail, restaurants, hair salons, self-employed professionals. And in terms of our job here in planning, I know that they're not arriving at work during traditional peak hours. They're arriving at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock and then leaving at different times. So I'm hoping that that plays into, the transit agencies, our operations dollars that we're able to provide so that we can serve those folks who are coming to our cities to work as well. And also noting that some of our smaller cities have only small pieces of real estate. We don't have any like company headquarters. We don't have hospitals. I mean, many of the smaller cities are that way too. So I just, I don't know if there's a weight to how you kind of take a look at those things. And I guess my question is to you is there a way? And then secondly, is a request to please take those things into consideration when planning.
Definitely. We're updating our employment centers right now, and it's going to be very original employment centers 2.0. But we are looking at the sectors and the employments. We're adding military and tribal, which we haven't before. And we also know that not every person, as you said, there's different times that people could be going to to work, their different resources they have to get to where they're going. So we want to take that all into consideration. And the data will also be on our open data portal, which will be before when we did Employment Centers 1.0, we had hard packets. This way you can get on and interact and look at the data. So definitely excited to share that with you.
That's good. And then one final comment. It's just weird that the Department of Finance, they should be like adjusting their numbers to ours because we know our region better rather than the other way around. Does not make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, well, so the guidelines are again within 1.5%, and they come out with all the counties and across the state. But no, in agreement with you, we definitely want to. We included them in our peer review. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just actually a quick follow-up. It's kind of related to the last two comments. So with respect to types of jobs and job centers, there are certain types of business, for example, hotels that require typically quite a bit of staffing. To what extent does the type of business that is operating being factored into the amount of housing that's required in order to support that, where that housing should be, ways to mitigate traffic, et cetera?
So I'll let Tueri add on, but just at a very basic level, we know that employment centers can bring people in who are working there, but there also could be attractions. People may be going there at different levels of frequency when you think about a hospital, for example. And I know as we're looking at housing and trying to do the best planning we can around mobility hubs and making sure that there are transportation options as well as housing that is affordable, but I'll let the planner speak more to that. But just in terms of the data, that's what we want to look at.
Yeah, I don't think I have much more to add. We do, we have our RENA numbers, and we certainly, when we're looking at infill housing, we look at opportunities for us to work with your jurisdictions, identify those areas for infill housing to try and put housing as close to job centers as we can. And then in terms of, I guess, just some of the comments around like making sure that we're looking at data beyond just the long work commutes, the data that we share today is just very focused on a couple of data points, but we do look at some of the non-traditional jobs and non-traditional commuting that people do and how we can accommodate that within the network.
And maybe this was already answered, but would a hotel, a medium to large hotel, be considered a job center?
May I answer that question? Thank you. So the job centers look at concentrations of employment in an area. So a hotel would add employment to that area. So we're looking at essentially at quarter mile grids, and we're saying how much employment is in there. We know the type of employment that's in there because we know what type of business each business is. So if you have a hotel next to a high rise and the high rise has law firms in it, then the type of employment we have mixed for that particular employment center would be hotel workers along with lawyers, because we would have, for instance, office workers in there. And so it's taken into account. When we look at the traffic distribution to these employment centers, it includes all of that. So Sereno Valley has a lot of employees who come from places like Carmel Valley. Okay, but they're not in the same occupation. They're mostly like in biotech, for instance. And so we have commute patterns going that direction. We also have a lot coming up from National City, but those people are mostly in the janitorial services. They're working at the restaurants over there. And so we can parse that out when we're looking at things like transportation systems in terms of where people are coming from and what type of occupations and jobs they have. That's kind of baked into what these employment centers are.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mayor Huebner, and we'll now go to Mayor Minto.
All right. It's funny that more than one of us use the term, find this very interesting. I know the projections based on data, and that's the best information we get based on the data that's given. I find it very interesting also that just like the Department of Financing, like you said, our numbers are different. Why don't they use ours? We know our region. Just like RENA numbers, the housing people said, you have to do this. They didn't know our region, which caused a lot of issues. Something that I guess may be difficult to capture is that I wrote down this note. I said, I wonder if failed leadership at the state level is taken into account. And when I say that, because we keep hearing about a growing population, except for in this instance, And my guess is sometime in the future, they're going to say we have a growing population again, just because that way they can bring more taxers or something. So anecdotally, at least there seems to be more people leaving the state because of they can't find work or sustainable wages in the work that they're doing. And a lot of the kids are leaving the state because they can find more affordable housing and they can find jobs outside of California. And then also, you know, parents are following their children because they want to be with the grandchildren. So that's the aging population we talk about. So it's, I find that it probably is pretty hard to capture that information on how many grandparents, and I'm going to use that term because they want to be near their grandchildren and they leave and they find out that it's more affordable someplace else. And so I think the only thing that might keep them here longer is what was already said a little bit earlier, is that they have to work longer because they can't afford to retire. So I guess maybe the question is, how do we take these, I'm not even sure the word, but to use for it, but the, you know, non-hard data, like a better term, I think I just made that up, and into consideration for all of these things we're talking about for a plan. And if we're going to have less people, less driving, well, you know, a lot of these people might not even live in California. They're telecommuting. So how do you take that into account?
So I think this could be like a coffee or other beverage discussion, because I think that's what, when we're using data, you want to look at the data, but you also want to see the story with the data. And numbers only tell one thing, and there's a story behind everybody. When we look at the migration, we're looking at domestic and international, and we also know about the race, age, gender of the individual. So we can do a lot of digger deeping. And that's what we want to do, is make sure we're giving you the data and information to figure out what policies could potentially help keep people or bring people in, to make sure that there's housing and options for people. So I definitely think this is really high level, but we'd like to share more of that data with you and discuss it and make sure that it's useful for you to, again, make the best for your communities in the region overall.
Thank you, Mayor Minto. Mayor Krantz.
Thank you. I wonder if you could put up the map of the traffic volumes.
It's around slide 7.
Pardon me? 10? And there was one more that had purple in it. So maybe you hit that one right there. I just want to kind of follow up on Councilmember Shu's point about the impacts on communities. Disadvantaged communities is real. You can look in the city of San Diego region and recognize that the freeway system really has a significant impact on those communities. However, I would also point out that these ribbons cutting through our region do not discriminate. Everywhere you see blue and purple, communities are being impacted environmentally in a very significant way. And we have, for the most part, lived with it for a long time in ways that affect our quality of life. We've got 5 interchanges with the freeway. Every one of those has volumes of traffic, morning and night, that really make a significant impact. And so while we're planning here regionally, it's important that when we're allocating resources that we do focus on that region in the San Diego area, but also everywhere these roads travel, we need to focus on how we can address the impacts of this system of transportation that we have. We are a very auto-centric country, community, region, and the impacts are real. I don't want, this isn't a plea for sympathy. This is just an acknowledgement that this is significant.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll now go to Councilmember Duncan and then Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you. Just a quick technical requests, sometimes when materials are added to our agenda, like the slides that were referred to on item number 15, the links don't work on our iPads for those materials. So I can't bring those slides up, and I check on Councilmember Shu's iPad as well. It's blocked and all of our other links work. So if you could just double check those. So, because it would be helpful to me, because I want to go to a slide, but I can't see it on here. It's the one that showed the housing numbers over the next decades. That one, thank you very much. So I heard you mention something about the military, or are those jobs, are that now being accounted to a certain extent? I was just wondering if you could elaborate if that includes the jobs, and or does it also include the housing on those bases? Because for Coronado, that's very significant, especially when the RENA numbers were done, is that we have a massive amount of military jobs on the multiple bases on Coronado. But when I meet with the CEO of the base, he explained to me recently, and we're getting those numbers, the housing that they're building a fairly significant amount of housing for the Navy at North Island Naval Air Station, as well as on the amphibious base. So any information or elaboration you can provide, I'd appreciate.
Great. So in terms of when I mentioned military and the employment centers, we're going to be pulling that out as separate employment centers, which is an improvement from our employment centers 1.0. In terms of the housing, Beth, I know we look at group quarters. Beth is a consultant who's helping us with this, and if she might be able to explain a little bit more how we do the housing on the military bases. And then Naomi, we do include military jobs are in our job numbers.
Oh, there we go. Beth Jarris from PRB. I've been supporting SANDAG staff in producing the regional growth forecast and then eventually the sub-regional forecast. Military populations, group quarters, and military households are included both in the base data and in the forecast. For the sub-regional forecast, SANDAG is going out and working with the local jurisdictions to understand where housing changes, whether it's development or redevelopment, are underway. And that would include outreach to the military to understand where they're building additional housing, whether it's barracks or family housing on base or PPOs off base.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm sure I'll find out down the road when we get to other things related directly to our new housing allocations. But for me, my understanding is that, the housing on the naval bases was not counted as a credit for the housing when RENA was done, but yet all the military jobs were. So that's why I'm so interested in this information and how it ties in or translates. Because when you say households, I usually think of households as like more like census, like counting the people versus actually counting the housing units themselves too. So anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Duncan. Our final speaker before we begin the exercise will be Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I looked at this slide and I looked at the slide showing transportation with the purple lines and I know with VMT, some people don't count any trips that start outside the county and they only focus inside the county. But I don't have numbers, I'm not an expert, but we know that people live in Tijuana that work here. We know that people, southwest corner of Riverside's blowing up with housing. So when we're thinking in terms of our housing needs, are we taking in consideration the fact that everywhere around us is growing by leaps and bounds? And when you talk to people, for example, when I talk to the sheriff's deputies that patrol my unincorporated area, more than half of them live in Riverside. When I talk, this is all anecdotal. So when I talk to my son who's on a Navy sub, half of his crewmates live in Riverside. And I'm thinking, as we're doing this is great work, but how do we account for those ghosts that live in Riverside or Tijuana? And how, how does that, how did you filter for that?
So we use something called a cohort component model that everything kind of feeds in and influences one another. So that, we start with the population. We need to be within that 1.5% with the DOF totals, which we ended up being. The number of jobs, we are doing that with the improved methodology that we had. The housing stock reflects the household rates as well as the population. We did not limit our number of jobs, assuming that people had to live here in the region, but that is definitely something we looked at, the percent of people who are in other adjoining counties who may be coming in, as well as influencing if we did have more jobs in the region, could that possibly increase our migration in here? And so it's all complex formulas that are working into it, and we want to take that into consideration and continuously improve our process for doing that. So there's a, and when I look at this with the housing stock, it doesn't talk about, is it housing that people can afford? It's housing units. So this is really that high level, and there's a lot more digging deeper as we talked about why people are here and how can we make the best policy decisions as a region to meet the needs of everybody here and moving for the future. And again, this is my first time getting into this as much as this, and I really think it's interesting. We're at this pivotal time where what do we do in the short term and then the long term and how that's going to change? How do we make decisions for our kids and our grandkids?
I really appreciate your hard work and your team's hard work. This is difficult and a lot of the assumptions are difficult. When I looked at the traffic and you looked at north of Escondido on the 15, there's not a lot there. And for them to have that much traffic, that to me speaks to how many people are living up there and working here. And I don't think many people living here work up here. I think it's all coming one way. So and I think that changes how many, if we had more homes here in stock, I don't know of anybody who says, I want to purchase a home as far away as my job as possible. I think most people, if they could find something comparable, would live closer to work. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. All right. Final, before we begin the exercise, Councilmember.
I was actually going to ask something along the lines of what our Supervisor Anderson said. When we look at our cross-border population in Chula Vista, I know that we hear a lot about folks that live in Tijuana, work here, but I actually grew up in the opposite direction where we lived here and my dad worked in Tijuana. And so there's a lot of complexities into how that, works. And we see a lot of that in Chula Vista with our population growing and having just a larger use for like multi-generational homes. And so that's just something that I would like for us to be considering as we move forward, which I'm sure you factor in some way, but there's just a lot there that goes into our cross-border population and what it all entails. So thank you for answering that.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, with that, Tueri, you want to assign us to our groups and then we can head over to
if we can put up the groups assignment side. So this workshop is going to be a little different than your prior ones and the fact that we're broken up into subregions. And so you should see your subregional assignments here on the screen. So if you want to take a look at the screen and see where you've been assigned for South County, North County, East and Central County, we have our planning manager staff who will be holding up numbers for which station you're at, 1, 2, or 3, and they'll be guiding you to conference room 7, where we had our prior workshops for us to all participate in prioritizing our projects and policies related to your subregion. So we'll give directions and instructions on what to do as part of that workshop over in conference room 7. So we have our planning managers, Jennifer Williamson has group 1, Danielle Coachman and Keith Greer have group 2. Alex Estrella and myself will take you to group 3. So thank you.
We'll do direct exams, guys. And you will be happy to know, Mayor, we're giving you 20 minutes today.
Oh, great.
Last time you guys were like, we didn't even figure the extra stays out. 3/4 of the way through it.
Yeah, we're all, we take a minute to catch on, so.
Sorry, I'd say there's lots of consecutive days that's to be done. Yeah, there is. There's have a lot of short trips. A lot of short.
Really?
Yeah, in your downtown, I think there's just one side. You pop more than anyone in our county.
Where are they going if they're downtown? Half the buildings are empty.
Well, I don't mean downtown, but it's like you're central here.
I gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it's like specifically in downtown, but you'll see it on the third map.
I saw it on there. There was like a deep red.
Markers. Yeah, more than.
Gotcha.
The last
I don't have. Oh, I do.
So there's two pockets.
Now, what is, oh, short trip define less.
I'm gonna join you. Yeah, I'm South Carolina. I'll take it off. It's not. No, I'm compared to any. Yes, compared to any. Different. So that's like going to the grocery store, shopping. Anybody that's working in like medical center, that area. Right. We want to be responsive to your feedback. One side where you want it organized, a little bit of time to just get settled in, learn the rules, and see all the stuff that you have at your table. So you'll see that we structured things a little bit differently this time. In the past, you've been at 5 different tables and you've had regional maps. This time, we've taken all those projects and policies that you prioritized to date on those regional maps. We put them on these sub-regional maps. So one table represents North County, one table represents the central part of the county, and the other table represents the southern part of the county. This exercise builds on the previous exercise, and I think Mayor Krantz was the one who said at the last workshop, when are we going to talk about specific projects? That's today. And because we want you to have plenty of time to talk about specific projects, we've given you 20 minutes for the exercise, and you've got data packets that will help you make decisions. So recap of what we've done to date for those of you who haven't been at all of the different workshops. The first workshop that you had back in May, we were really focused on, we've got to meet that target, the 19% per capita reduction by 2035. what are the projects and the policies that we can prioritize in those first 10 years that will help us get there? So you put a lot of stickers on the map. If you added a project that increased VMT, then you had to add projects that decreased VMT. You still need to do that today if you have projects. If we're going to have increases in VMT, we got to make sure we mitigate to meet our target. The next workshop was really focused on equity and our equity requirements. So you adjusted projects, you added new projects that would help us improve accessibility, mobility, air quality, and disadvantaged communities. At your last workshop, we talked about funding. It was how could we fund all of the projects that you had prioritized to date with the available revenues or potential new revenue sources. So today, we've got data packets that are specific to your subregions, data that you saw in today's presentation, jobs, population, commute patterns. You're going to look at that data. You're going to do a gut check. Are the projects that you put on your map so far the right projects? Are there different projects? Should you maybe change projects after looking at the data? If you don't have to be constrained by the project categories that are there, you can write whatever projects that you want or use those project categories and write more specific information about the projects that are on the map. You have 2 planning managers at your table to help you understand the data, answer any questions that you have. You also have a member of our data science team. So if you have more questions about the forecast, a lot of great discussion in the other room, you can continue to have those conversations. Naomi, our economist, is here. Cindy and our chief economist and deputy CEO, Ray Major, is here at this table. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to all of you. We'll put the timer up. I'll let you know we have 5 minutes left. You can start to do a summary. What we want is to have one of the planning managers do a report out for each of the tables at the end. And this is when we'll do our thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways exercise. So you're gonna verify that what the planning manager says is representative of the conversation that you had today. And I'm going to be documenting that the best I can. We have somebody typing and I'll be writing. So we'll capture everything at the end. Okay, sound good? Thumbs up. All right, with that, let's get the timer started.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Lentz, Senior Mobility Planning Manager at SANDAG. I'm joined by Rachel Kennedy. She is So before we jump into the projects, I'd like you to just take note of the maps that we have in front of you. This is a lot of important data. I'm going to just go through this really quickly so you understand what these maps are showing. Essentially, this map is showing you the types of events that are occurring from the South Bay to and what we're seeing here is that there's actually a lot of long making that happens in the South County. We're seeing that people are traveling as far up from the border to Sorrento Valley, from Chula Vista to Sorrento Valley. We see that Kearney Mesa is also a big driver for a lot of those trips. Additionally, our employment centers in downtown San Diego. So this is really showing you where some of the most common and frequent trips are occurring within the region. A lot of long trip making, for example. Yes. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. So this map, if you look at this map, this is where our employment centers are in population density. What you're seeing here is that National City pops as an center. There's probably a lot there. Military opportunities there. And then downtown San Diego, which is just on the north edge of this map pops. And what this shows you too is that the population densities are spread out all over. Essentially what this means is that people have to travel to get to the This map here shows you how far people can travel. And that orange in the middle is Kearney Mesa. And this is just an example where, but they how far you can go on transit to by transit within 30 minutes. I'm sorry, National City. We were looking at Kearney Mesa the other day. How far you can get by transit within 30 minutes. So that dark orange shows that. The lighter orange shows you how far you can get by this part. And you can see the variance there. So what this is really meant to illustrate is that transit needs to do a whole heck of a lot to provide some of the extra movements within our yeah.
This is an example. It's one of our counties. So for people who are going to a job, and this is for the. Within 30 minutes. If you're in a national city at your job and you want to, if you want to take a camera, would have to be in that dark orange area. Okay. So, and then if you were at your job in national city, you're gonna go home, here's the. Drive. Get to your house, located all in the lights.
Go back.
If you want to offer a more meaningful picture, you have access.
We're short trips, less than 4 miles.
You have to really get some travel.
So around Escondido, around San Marcos.
Yeah, that's it, but we can through conversion. Will be a redesign. There are
Way severe. Talk about the. For example, San Marcos.
It's very difficult to be able to get that information to you, but
Really need to figure out.
areas. And they can help.
All right, so.
Earlier.
don't have the. You're not.
No, so all 5 hours. Maybe.
Everything.
Local money. The question is. I know. I don't think you have to answer that.
Okay, and then the last map that you have is short trip density. So the darker the purple, the darker the pinker colors on this map show you where there's a lot of short trip. And so what this is showing you really here is that, again, national city really pops. There's a lot of trips that are happening. Western logistics really pops in terms of, and then as you come up in downtown San Diego, that western corridor along is where you're getting a lot of those choices. But, you know, we had a good question here. So what about Coronado and what about the military? And what you heard earlier is that they're developing fire. But what we've seen is our forecasters at SANDAG. So we don't have that information for you today, but we have done analysis as part of our Southeast Retro CMCP. And what we're seeing is a tremendous volume of people coming out of the beach and up out of the most southern portions of our region into Coronado via the SR 75. Additionally, though, we're seeing a lot of people from the middle part of the region and the eastern part of the region coming across the region and across the ridge, specifically to go to that base at Coronado. So Coronado is kind of impacted by both parts of the region as far as into the area. And then one more thing before I get you guys started, what you're seeing on the map is that there's a big concentration in national city on the projects that have been developed. But think about what this data is showing you and put the blanks on the map. What about Western Chilivis? We haven't really spoken about that. What about additional services for the border? The border carries a lot of trips. And we have some data here that tells you exactly what's happening at the border. We get 136,000 people that cross the border every day. And of those, northbound, 60,000 passenger trips of cars that come across the border. If you think about that, that's like 3 climate bonds every day coming across the border. So what kind of infrastructure does that require? What kind of projects does that require? And then think about the impacts of all of these vehicles coming across the region on the roadways and the transit system that need to provide service to kind of distribute people up from the border. And so with that, what I'd like you to do, we've added some additional stickers. So before we didn't have a great sticker because we were focused really on what the 2035 projects are. We added a rail sticker. So if you like, you can add that. I know there's been tremendous interest in the purple line, which would travel from the border up through the middle portion of our county. We can add that. There's been, you know, if there's additional projects that you define, you don't have to be limited by these anymore. If you have thoughts of your own of projects that you think would kind of serve or answer the questions of the region that we're facing in this area, we can add those as well. So why don't you take a minute and just familiarize yourself with what is on the map today? And we can have. Just one last comment though, if you add a red, we're gonna add any kind of three-way span. We need to add 4 more pairs of blue and yellow to mitigate for that.
Large.
Communities can be host events. It can be linear parks that bridge communities together. So if you think like a pedestrian bridge with a park, it can be three-way paths.
We are
Has bridges. There's a host of different elements that can fall.
I know you guys are coming out.
So right now.
Sorry. No, it's gonna be.
Get off the. Go through. So that's why. Long way.
So what we're doing today is we're already thinking about this, even though we don't have the forecast, we know that the military's in charge.
Yeah, it's very.
To travel within.
I have a lot of city staff.
Especially Coronado, Point Loma, National City. We know that. So we're already thinking. What we need from you guys today is to really look at this and say, is this enough? In this area, you know, address the projects that we just showed, the problems that we just showed. You know, so we want to.
So these are communities that are low income that impacted by air quality.
That's what we're doing here.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing them all. So I are there other projects that we? Yeah.
Yes.
Demographics, the number of people flowing in there. It's relative. You know, that was 3,000 jobs.
They identified rapid part of the near term, so it would line up with the two. Talking about rail, sorry.
But they're
About,
profiles.
making the rail more efficient. Is that right?
The better way of doing it.
Living it off of Delmar
Because
Plus.
that way.
Aging model.
Okay, gang, we have 8 minutes, and if you want to add any additional projects to our board here to meet the problems that we see, we need to get on this. Remember though, you accountable, you have to pair it with the yellow. So.
So I think the biggest thing that helped was show us that
Our plan is.
about that is the great separation But really, it's just so chaotic. It's like, we gotta go in and out real quick.
Yes.
K-rail
Yeah.
and without.
And I know everybody always says, well, so would you want to add a race? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Went over your shoulder.
No, you're fine.
Add a rail there and maybe. It's going here. What about a yellow? What a yellow would you want to pair with? I know we have trolley, what do you think would something like that to? Yeah. If you look at that, right?
Yeah, there's actually some
And a lot of.
Yeah, so are we okay if we're looking at 22, we don't have to have the red.
What does that?
Pricing, so people would.
Getting us
report on
started.
that when you guys-
Yeah, okay.
Starship.
Right.
Sorry, thank you. Someone was listening.
We do like that.
Okay. So now we talked about.
That's
a really hard part. I mean, if I-
Right now, there are three. You're talking about adding one.
Right, yeah, right.
You see how they're already carrying
So
out.
that
What are we?
Making people
So remember, you get the vision of what's.
That's our, the next priority. On the calendar. It's gonna be another, it's gonna be yellow and blue. Right.
What I'm still thinking is yours. I have to go all the way around.
That's fine.
What I'm saying is, there's an opportunity.
I mentioned how there's.
One area is inside.
I mean, it's all open to.
My question is.
Yeah, I know, sorry. Oh, no, I'm not, sorry, I was asking. Yeah. I was like, I know. Yeah.
Down in the lakeside.
Good morning, guys. Right now.
If you guys. Service for getting service.
We can right.
Okay.
Pricing.
Oh, I heard that.
It would be in your commercial. Or your major employers. Parking pricing.
I was just.
It's just around the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parking meters. And then also with the. Yeah, because I don't know what you. Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, I wasn't sure. I was very. Yeah. And I think. I just. They're not very good, right? Or they're not have to be almost in a year. They're making them. Another very. And so.
Maybe not, but I want to add the cross-border.
And then on top of the sandcastle, it's like literally over 3 sandcastles.
Okay, yeah, this is for the purple line, right?
It's like, this is what people are.
I don't, yes, a station.
I. Right down here.
You know, there's been a lot of support from the license who brought it up, but I don't see a rail sticker down there yet.
Is the purple the MC vaccination?
No, purple's a brand new concept. Up through 805 urban. And then.
Challenge out there, right? You know, again, I'm hearing it.
I think for us, we need like. I'm all
Yeah. 6 and 7.
Already there. And also.
We're all on the subject.
So we kind of usually will see that. I think that should be a priority. No, when you have red, you need to have an hour at least. Right? Yeah. One more combination.
Regional.
Yeah. What I need to have one file that should go on. And it's only, but this is a lot of. Well, I think we would like it. Over there. So maybe, yeah, we should either manage. We have two goals.
For us to be on the same page.
Seriously, but you have here with.
So we those very, like 3 miles per hour. We were hoping of it. It's just a general idea of.
Wait, no, you're like.
Yeah. And I think the very here. Was it here? The very. Yeah.
All right, everyone, thank you for engaging in that topic. We have the principles that we've agreed to over the last month. Yeah. Over here, over there, correct? On those boards are all of the projects reported full staff that we would like to see in the regional plan. And so it's my opinion, the staff is going to take all this now and turn it into an official concept for our review, our collective review later this year. And Antoinette, do I have that part right?
Correct. So throughout the month of August, we're doing a lot of public outreach, we're taking all of this, everything we hear from the community, putting together that concept, we'll be back in the fall, we're gonna present that to you for the first time.
All right, thank you so much. And I want to make sure that we are all competent staff that's captured and understands what we're looking for then. So we're going to go to each group here where they are, and then based on those recaps, each of those groups will give a thumbs up, thumbs down, or sideways, just to ensure that what was reported out was accurate. We're not looking for consensus across the room today in the same way that we were in the previous steps of the process. really the goal here is to make sure staff hears from all of us and that we've had a chance to talk this through together and what we've said is in caption. So with that, if we could have staff share where we're at.
We'll start with table 1, which I think is the table on the end there for South County.
Yep.
With a quick summary.
Sure. So our table is a South County table. We had a really good discussion. Some of the things that we talked about as far as the data and the travel were that this area is unique and it has the international border and some of the different dynamics that come with that, with travel, with people who live on both sides of the border and commuting for jobs. We also talked a bit about military jobs. We have Naval Base Coronado here. We have our base in National City and a lot of travel that happens for people employed by the military. Our group spent quite a bit of time focusing on adding additional projects, looking to reconnect communities, adding in the Purple Line, which is a longer range project, adding some ferry connections that we didn't have before. And we didn't get as much time as maybe we'd hope for prioritizing some of the different projects, but some of the things that came up as being important, at least in our initial discussion, was sort of the Harbor Drive 2.0, Vesta Bridge, and reconnecting communities in the area of National City around the port, the base, and making travel there easier and bringing that together. The addition of the ferries that we put to offer service to Coronado from other communities within this region. Making improvements to transit frequency kind of throughout the region and in this area, and making transit move more quickly and more efficiently. And then team, were there other items that I might have missed?
I added the cross-border trolley for their station in Tijuana that would help people get from Tijuana into San Diego.
Right, so I want to make sure that group, that sounds good, thumbs up, that's an accurate reflection of what you all shared out. Oh, awesome. Councilmember Molina, thank you for mentioning that one. That was, I know that Councilmember Campillo could not be there with San Diego, and that would have been, and then I would have been really excited as well. All right, so moving to the next group.
Next group, and this is the North County group here. So good conversation about the projects we have and some information we desire to have to make more insightful plan in the future. But here's the top takeaways we have. The active transportation improvements are needed around Vista, Coast Highway, and I'll add in San Marcos as well, based upon the data that they tell us and crashes. The Carlsbad Airport area by Kaalmada Luqadda Road needs flexible feeds and micro transits. Traditional buses aren't cutting it. Now we use a lot of ridership in traditional buses, and there needs to be something different out there. There was a discussion about a pilot bus that went from the coaster to a job in Carlsbad, and that was successful, but it hasn't been started up again. There needs to be grade separations both for the Sprinter and for the coaster before any increased frequencies of those ridership. We need to move the rail off the Del Mar bluffs and get a more sustainable location. There's a lot of students that come to Cal San Marcos, and we need to have some kind of micro transit, a way to move those students around. And we had a conversation about the data of where those students are coming from would be helpful in terms of defining a project and the type of micro transit. There's a need to have an interregional rapid bus service coming down I-15 for the jobs in this region. And finally, we just touched a little bit on 67. You need to make improvements on 67. But anything else, James?
So we noted that and missing data space is the La Jolla high-tech area, and who goes into that area from North County, and then up in the North County, the high-density jobs areas. Who is going into each of those? Where are people who work in these jobs coming from? We need that for better further planning.
And the 78 management expansion should be on there. It was just a given from previous exercises.
And a general theme is better east-west connectivity, perhaps with micro transit.
That sound like an accurate. Thumbs up to the group that reflects the conversation.
I think we also talked about not switching lanes from regular lanes into managed lanes. I think we all, a lot of us, very, yeah, on the 70.
Not converting.
Yeah, not converting. Yeah.
All right, with that, does the group feel comfortable? Is that an accurate reflection of what they'll talk about? And then, Mayor, I know we talked a little bit, we'll go to the final group in a moment, but I know we talked a little bit about how this process compares to other processes that you participated in. You want to just kind of share out with the groups. I thought that was valuable.
Yeah, sure. I actually like to acknowledge the whole board and staff because having been part of the 2015 RTP and not having been part of the 2021, but I'm hearing that not a lot of people were part of the 2021 regional planning. I just want to really acknowledge that this process is working. I don't know. I think that we all feel included. Our thoughts have been included. We've definitely been heard. In the 2015, what I recall occurring was sort of an ad hoc, like a few of us would get together from our sub-regions and you sort of, I was thinking about it more, you had to be invited and some of us weren't really invited and then we kind of like found out about it. You know, I mean, it lacked in information from staff. It lacked in understanding about, we did understand the color of money, but we didn't understand a lot of the regulations that the state was at the time sort of just formulating, and a lot of them hadn't been tested legally. And so we were a little bit up in the air. So it was not a collaboration with staff who could have corrected us along the way. And we would go through these little options of option A or B or C, and what is it that we wanted to do. And then we came together at the board meeting, kind of had a little discussion. It wasn't always as productive as we wanted, and where we heard, I don't know how people felt about that. Here, I really feel that we have been given both an education and an opportunity to educate staff about what our real needs are in our cities and sub-regions. So I would just want to acknowledge that I think this has been a great process, and I hope that and I anticipate that it's going to result in a 2025 update that reflects the region better.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to our final group.
Okay, so group 3 is representing central and the eastern part of our county. And so in terms of the projects, we talked a lot about the projects that we wanted to prioritize. And one of them that we wanted to prioritize is State Route 52, but we are open to conversion. Particularly there is an active transportation corridor on that. And so looking at converting that for the ability to use it for truck climbing lanes and then moving the bike lane to just south of the corridor. So not eliminating from the corridor, just moving it. So we settled on a managed lane conversion with accommodating the truck climbing lane. And then in the lakeside community, we wanted to focus on State Route 67. And so we wanted to see some capital dollar improvements towards safety related infrastructure being added to that corridor, as well as acknowledging that there maybe needs to be some technology investments on that corridor, because we had a lot of conversation about some of the being able to need to coordinate better with the highway patrol on where to go. And so some technology improvements to support some of that capital improvements focused on safety. And then there was a desire to complete the interchange of State Route 94 and 125. And in terms of the central part of our county, we wanted to make sure that we were focused on keeping the projects that are there. We're focused on infill, rapids, flexible fleets, and the managed lane conversions. And then those were all of our more near-term priorities. And the longer term, there was also an interest to have that east-west rail line connection, connecting with the Purple Line to be able to accommodate some of the trips that we see from South County that are currently cutting through some of our eastern cities to get to the major job centers of Serrano Valley and Curry Mesa. Hopefully I captured everything.
I suggest amendment, not expand the interchange 125 and 94, but solve that problem. Resolve the problem, but we don't have to. We'd have to build a giant bridge over the whole freeway to resolve the problem.
No.
Build in a tunnel.
Yeah, but there's water contamination, so I'm not easy. But we'll zoom in process.
Jack, Joel, and John are gonna go get computers and figure that out. Does that accurately reflect the conversation?
Yes.
Thumbs up there. All right. Antoinette, do you have any additional questions for the board while we're in? Anything else that we've learned? All right. So thank you everyone for the state staff for putting this together. We'll head back to the boardroom for our next item. Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to reconvene here. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, if we get folks to settle back in, and I believe we need to call the roll, right?
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Robin has it.
I can bang my,
There you go.
do like this. All right, we won't call the roll. It'll just be a surprise. All right, let's move on to item 16. Our airport transit connection item. So just a little bit of introduction here. I don't have it. Yeah, I'm gavelless. All right. Providing a direct and convenient transit option to our region's airport has been on San Diego's, the region's to-do list for a long time. It's been talked about for over 40 years. And airport transit is something that nearly every other big metropolitan area in the United States has done. And we believe that it's the San Diego region's time to step up and join our peers. But this is not just about keeping up with other regions or building a project for the sake of crossing it off our priority list. There is definitely an urgency here that has not existed before. The airport's expanding, and that is a good thing. We want lots of visitors coming in and out of our region, boosting our economy, creating jobs. However, without a viable transit option, more travelers means more traffic. And that traffic is traffic that impacts those of us who live here. It's more road congestion, more pollution, more frustration for San Diegans. And that affects everyone in our region, which is why this item is so important. Good news is that our region's public agencies are uniting to address this looming challenge. Airport Authority is already investing in the project and made a transit link a key piece of its plan to manage the impact of Terminal 1 redevelopment, and has helped secure $350 million for a transit link to airport property. It has also set aside valuable land in between Terminals 1 and 2 to accommodate a future transit stop. So with that as a backdrop, we're going to get the most extensive, in-depth look at airport connections that we've seen in decades on the discussion of this issue. I'm looking forward to hearing from the SANDAG team on realistic project concepts, projects that will shorten travel times, improve connectivity, and projects that will increase transit use and reduce traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. They will also be responsive to community feedback. And finally, projects that will be competitive for federal grants, most notably the South Lake concept that we will see today, which I believe clearly delivers the most bang for the buck. With that, we'll hand it over to Victoria to start things off.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for that kind introduction. We are pleased to present today the Airport Transit Connection Concept Evaluation Study. Today, we will present real, achievable solutions to connect the airport to the entire regional transportation system. The presentation will go over what is an airport transit connection, where will it go, and how do we get one? Together, let's look at the art of the possible. Connecting our airport to the regional transportation system has been something we've wanted to do for decades, and something that we've heard from many of you on. With traffic to the airport expected to grow from 25 to 40 million passengers by 2050, and the recent availability of federal and state funds, we believe the San Diego region stands to be highly competitive to secure additional resources for an airport transit connection. This study specifically looked at different configurations of what could be. Starting with the concepts first defined by the Airport Connectivity Subcommittee, we looked at multiple scenarios and how they would deliver both benefits for now and as our transit system grows. For each option, emphasis was placed on direct connections to the Los Angeles corridor, including coaster, Amtrak, trolley, and enhanced bus services. Before I pass it off to Ryan to dive into the study, I'm excited to say that based on the study's findings, we have a very real path to delivering this project. With that, Ryan Kohut, Director of Special Projects, will walk you through the study, and we look forward to your input.
Thank you, Victoria. Now we're going to shift into a discussion about how we can make this connection. and where these connections could occur. But before I start, I'd like to thank all the stakeholders who helped us develop this study. The airport, the Port of San Diego, MTS and NCTD have all been critical partners in bringing this forward. I'd also like to mention the consultant team that worked so hard to help us put the study together, WSP and HDR, as well as our project management team at HNTB. We looked at 7 airport transit connections concepts developed from our planning and study efforts to date, public input and ideas shared by board members, and which we'll now talk about next. We studied 3 different modes to provide the airport transit connection: an automated people mover system, or APM, the trolley, and enhanced bus service. APM systems are common throughout the country. Some of them, like in Sacramento, go between terminals. Others, like in San Francisco, connect to the regional transit system. And Los Angeles is nearly finished building its APM system at LAX and hopes to open in next year. We also looked at an extension of the existing trolley system, which we're all familiar with. And then finally, we looked at bus service, which would operate on existing roadways. However, this would require conversion of existing lanes to bus-only lanes, as well as traffic signal priorities. Because APM systems, oh, did it go through? Okay. Because APM systems are a new concept for the region, I want to take a minute to describe why so many airports around the world use them. The systems use smaller vehicles than other transit options, and this smaller footprint and quiet all-electric operation makes them nimble. They can be integrated and threaded through communities and even through buildings. They can also be made architecturally attractive, helping to mitigate visual impacts. They operate with very short headways. Trains often come every 2 to 4 minutes, which is necessary for airport passengers who are trying to make flights on time. Finally, APM technology and vehicles are designed for airport users. They have level boarding and ample room inside, which are really ideal conditions for passengers, trying to roll on luggage, or if you're trying to push a baby stroller, or disabled passengers in wheelchairs. This map shows airports in the United States that have automated people mover systems that provide airport transit. The cities highlighted in purple are airports that have on-airport APM systems. The cities highlighted in blue have APM systems that are on airport, but also travel off airport to connect to other transit modes. Of the 10 largest cities in the United States, all except San Diego and San Antonio are working to bring APM systems to their airports. As I mentioned, LAX is looking to open theirs next year. San Jose is currently in project development on a similar system. Now that you know more about the modes we considered, I'd like to move on to the specific concepts that we studied, which came from our analysis, board member suggestion, and public input. We looked at 5 different concepts for APM systems. This map shows all of them. The solid line shows alignments common to all concepts, while the dashed lines show optional connection points, several of which were suggested by the board and public. 2 options shown in red only go north, either to the rental car facility or to the Old Town Transit Center. The 3 options shown in yellow go both north and south, with the southern route ending at either Santa Fe Depot, the Convention Center, or the downtown urban core. All of these concepts have an optional station at Harbor Island, and the southern route includes an optional station at the County Administration Building. It's also important to note that the north and south routes could be funded and constructed alone, or as individual phases of either as individual phases of a single project or as 2 standalone projects. To understand a standalone southern option, we also looked at a concept that connects to the trolley coaster, Amtrak, and our bus services at Santa Fe Depot that could either be extended either to the downtown civic core or to the convention center. The southern option stood out because it efficiently connects to the existing system. It provides fast and more frequent service, and it's more straightforward to build, has fewer community impacts, which we'll talk about more later in the presentation. A South Lake's projected use would also help further the 2021 regional plan goals to significantly increase transit ridership, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The next concept is an extension of the existing trolley service. It would operate as a new service on existing tracks from the 12th and Imperial station to roughly Hawthorne Street, where it would share existing tracks with blue and green line trolley service. The new tracks would be built start at Hawthorne to take the trolley west to Harbor Drive and then north up to the airport, also including that optional station at Harbor Island. Connections to the trolley, coaster, Amtrak, and buses would be made at Santa Fe Depot, but trolley and bus connections could also be made at 12th and Imperial. The final concept we studied was enhanced bus service. These images show the two existing bus routes that serve the airport, the MTS Route 992 bus and the San Diego Flyer, which is operated by the Airport Authority. This concept proposes keeping the same routes, but enhancing service by either converting general purpose lanes to bus-only lanes, as well as adding traffic signal priority to improve the speed and reliability of the system. For Route 992, which is the map on the left, the bus would replace general travel lanes along Broadway with bus-only lanes from City College to Harbor Drive. It would then turn north on Harbor Drive and travel to the airport on general purpose lanes with other traffic. For the San Diego Flyer, which is the map on the right, the bus would travel from the Old Town Transit Center in a bus-only lane along Pacific Highway to Laurel, where it would then enter general purpose lanes with other traffic on its way to Harbor Drive, or down Harbor Drive. Like Route 992, it would also share traffic, share with existing traffic. Okay, so now we know what we studied, 7 concepts, various north-south routes. And so, what did we learn from this study? We analyzed each of these concepts to see how they performed under a set of focus areas: passenger convenience and ridership, congestion of airport access, sustainability, feasibility and constructability, cost, and then the community effects and economic benefits provided by the investment. The next few slides will show you some of the highlights of our findings. It's important to note that these are not always apple-to-apple comparisons, but these modes have different characteristics and routes serve some different passengers. But the information in the study gives us important data that's really going to help us, identify the right project to move forward with. Looking at who would use a potential system, we're pleased to learn that people around the county would be expected to take advantage of an airport transit connection. More importantly, people around the county would all see travel time savings for airport transit trips. This map shows where airport transit trips are likely to originate for the APM concepts, as well as a sample of the travel time improvements from key destinations. This map shows the same information, but for the trolley concept. As you can see, the travel time reductions are not quite as high as with the APM systems. And then this final map shows you the trip origins and transit travel time savings for the bus concept, which also is not quite as significant as with the APM systems. As we mentioned earlier, in addition to providing transit users greater convenience, the ATC project would also deliver benefits to drivers by relieving and preventing congestion on the roadways around the airport. The APM concepts relieve congestion at key points around the airport, including Laurel Street, by up to 20%. The trolley and enhanced bus concepts also provide congestion relief, but it's somewhat less than what the APM systems can provide. As I mentioned earlier, all of the concepts will have some construction impacts and risks, which will need to be considered against each concept's benefits. There's a lot more detail in the study, but this slide is summarizing some of the key points. For the APM concepts, there would be issues with integrating an APM station at the Old Town Transit Center, really because we can get the APM to the west side of I-5, but getting it to cross over I-5 is very difficult because you have to go either way up in the air or way underground. So really integrating that APM stop to the west of the 5 and then creating a pedestrian connection to Old Town is challenging and maybe somewhat difficult. Also, part of the construction area, especially on the northern routes, requires you to go around the end of the airport at Laurel and Pack Highway. Those could be, because of FAA restrictions, that may limit some construction hours and some design options. For the trolley concept, there is property that would likely be needed right there at Pack Highway and Hawthorne, and allowing the new trolley line to break off the existing main line that would need to be acquired, as well as construction in and around the existing heavy and trolley lines would be a little bit complicated, potentially risky, and a little bit slow due to the need to maintain those existing rail operations. For the bus concept, the major impact would be, converting, general purpose lanes on Broadway and Pack Highway from existing use into bus-only lanes. Another issue with the trolley concept that needs to be taken under consideration is the additional gate downtime and traffic impacts that would occur by adding additional service to that existing main line between 12th and Imperial and Hawthorne Street. There are 8 grade crossings of the trolley line that this new airport service would need to utilize. Today with current blue and green line trolley, coaster, freight, and Amtrak service, the crossing gates at those intersections are currently down and preventing traffic flow approximately 15 to 20 minutes every hour. There are plans out there to increase service frequency on these lines, which will also increase that gate downtime from there. When new airport trolley service is added, that gate downtime increases to approximately 30 to 35 minutes every hour, where the gates are down really more than they're up. This will have an impact on road congestion on those streets, and really the streets, parallel as that traffic can back up while those gates are down. This slide here compares the projected ridership of each concept. It's important to keep in mind that there are different types of riders here. The green bar shows passengers that would be either picked up or dropped off at a proposed port transit center before continuing on using the transit connection to the airport. The purple bar shows passengers that would access the airport connection from the consolidated car rental facility. And then the blue bars, which are the most important to pay attention to, they show transit riders. Those are people who are using the broader regional transit system to access the airport connection. These riders are really important because it's these riders who help us achieve our key regional plan goals of increasing transit use, reducing VMT, and improving sustainability. We believe that transit ridership is really the most consistent with the goals of the airport's $300 million plus commitment, as well as their offer of providing a transit-ready area on their property as part of their airport redevelopment efforts. Finally, increasing transit ridership is also a key metric that puts us in a competitive position for state and federal funding. As you can see, the APM South leg captures the most of that transit ridership of all the concepts we studied. Of course, one of the other most important features or issues to consider is the project cost. This table, the table on this slide provides a high and low cost estimate for each concept. The range represents uncertainty at this early project definition stage, and these costs are rough order of magnitude and not precise. But this graph, this graph shows the APM concepts all in an aerial configuration, which is the most affordable approach. The South Leg option in particular is, ranging between $1 and $2 billion. The trolley also in that same $1 to $2 billion cost range, and aerial, but would also include some tunneling and trenching as it approaches the airport, as well as the additional track as you break off the main line at Hawthorne into the airport. We also ran cost estimates for the APM concepts to reflect tunneled options, which are now shown in hashed green and white. Notice that we had to change the vertical axis quite a bit, or the vertical axis of the graph quite a bit to kind of fit that cost estimate in. As you can see, tunneling increases costs considerably, adding several billion dollars and, really pushing up towards that $7 billion high end. If we assume that the project would be constructed without a tunnel, projected costs are much more manageable. And based on preliminary estimates, several of these concepts appear financially feasible. Cost per rider assesses the cost effectiveness of each concept. It speaks to the competitiveness of each of these concepts for Federal Transit Administration funding. Lower is better for cost per rider. The FTA is really unlikely to consider riders traveling between a car rental center and the airport when they consider, their major transit grant programs. The three concepts on the right, though, have the highest cost effectiveness, and the Southern APM leg is the most cost-effective option that carries the most transit riders. There's a significant amount of information in this study, and we really urge you to take the time to understand the findings, and please follow up with any questions. What we believe that this study makes clear, though, is that we have a prime opportunity to move this critical project forward to address a growing problem before it gets worse. The South Leg option in particular is a realistic project that delivers real benefits and appears to be financially feasible. The local commitment to this project is as strong as it's ever been, alongside unprecedented opportunities for funding at the state and federal level. And while construction costs increases have slowed from record highs, they are not projected to go down anytime soon. The study findings show that this project will have a real and meaningful impact on the region, which will only grow as our transportation network continues to expand. And by advancing this project into the environmental phase, we will better understand the relative costs and benefits of a narrower set of alternatives as we continue to gather more stakeholder feedback. And critically, we'll be able to begin the effort to pursue state and federal funding to ensure that we really take advantage of this historic investment in infrastructure that we're seeing in California and nationwide. And I'll pass it over to Victoria.
I'll finish with our next steps and then we'll open it up to questions. As I mentioned, we're going to spend the next few months meeting with stakeholders and partners to present the study findings and garner additional input. This includes appearing before the Airport Authority Board to present on September 7th. In the fall, we will update the board as we advance the project into the environmental review process. If it hasn't been clear from this presentation, while we look at a range of alternatives in the environmental process, at this point, staff's assessment is that the South Leg automated people mover offers the best balance of costs and benefits. Thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for the presentation, Ryan and Victoria. We'll do public comment and then, or did you want?
I just have a quick
Sure.
question. My question is, it's appearing as if the South Leg is the one that's got a lot of the benefits to it. But being a resident of North County, I want to make clear that it does serve North County, right? Because it will go to the Santa Fe Depot. Versus, yeah, if you could just sort of explain that a little bit more, so how we North County folks would be able to access that. So
what this system is about, whether if we're talking about the South Leg APM, is really about providing that fast, reliable, efficient connection between the transit system and the airport. And what we're talking about here is a APM system that where, if you take the coaster down from North County to Santa Fe, you can get off that train, and every 2 to 4 minutes, there's an APM vehicle ready for you to jump on, and 6-7 minutes later, you're at the airport. And so, that's that integration between coaster and this system is what we really feel benefits.
And that would remove the problem that you were discussing with the old town and being able to make that connection. And if I recall, when you stop at Old Town, it's like, what, 5 more minutes until you get to Santa Fe? It's not very much, maybe 10 minutes. I don't even think it's 10 minutes.
It's not very long. It's a couple of minutes. And, the better we make that coaster service, this will be even more impactful. But at Santa Fe Depot, we can really integrate that coaster connection, that Amtrak connection with this APM vehicle to really provide that quick, easy service. So you get off one mode onto the next over to the airport.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for the clarifying question, Mayor Huebner. We're going to go to public comment and then we'll begin. We'll have the board conversation after that.
Thank you. We have a total of 13 public comments on this item. We'll start with the folks in the room. We'll start with Truth, and Truth will be followed by Christopher Allen.
All right, Lisa, you should know the public transit system like the back of your hand. It's your future after all. So is an automated people mover system going to be those UFOs I suggested before? Those are probably safer and more affordable. It cost $40 million just for the studies, but I disagree about the trip time reductions. For San Ysidro, the time difference between an APM and a trolley is a measly 2 minutes for over $3 to $7 billion. The chart on page 245 even shows that there won't be any major difference in ridership. And I'm not against a bus, but let's be realistic. Bus connections to Old Town, Santa Fe, and Civic Center make sense as their connection points, but City College, it's far and away. And why is the county center station only an option rather than a connection? It's the closest stop. I'm wondering if Nora's afraid of more people coming to speak at BOS. And I guess you guys just want to step it up with more regional pipe dreams, because that's what it sounds like to me, that enough people are going to take a bus from the airport to make it financially viable, that MTS is going to be able to pay for more trolley service, and that an APM is worth the price when it doesn't seem to be to me.
Our next speaker will be Christopher Allen, who will be followed by Alex Shaw.
Christopher Allen, Southwest Mountain States Regional Council of Carpenters. I represent over 6,500 members in San Diego, and as far as this project pursuing the better for the people of San Diego, it absolutely does. The length of time it gets to get to the airport, the stress it takes, just putting this ATM in, it speaks words of the visionary of SANDAG. We support this project. We will always support when we build infrastructure, smart infrastructure, and making sure that projects like these that allow greater jobs, wages, and benefits for the working class of San Diego. To close, America's finest city needs America's finest automated people mover. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Alex Shaw, who will be followed by Janet Rogers.
Good morning, Vice Chair Ella Rivera and members of the board. My name is Alex Shaw, one of the owners of the historic Santa Fe Depot in downtown San Diego. My family and I purchased the Santa Fe Depot in 2017 as a long-term investment. We've invested millions of dollars into restoring the property, and we're excited to continue our work to transform it into a vibrant destination and transportation hub. We plan to redevelop the property and add amenities for visitors and enhance its historic elements. These improvements will boost public access, utility, and enjoyment of this important historic resource. Our goal is to restore the glory of the depot, which remains a gateway to our city. That is why we are strongly supportive of this proposed transit link between the airport and Santa Fe Depot. Obviously, connecting the airport to the transit system is something we've needed for a long time, but making this connection to San Diego's urban core will continue to create a synergy between the airport and other modes of transportation, a reactivated Santa Fe Depot, and the greater San Diego downtown community.
Your time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Next will be Janet Rogers, who will be followed by Elaine Avigdor.
Good morning. I'm Janet Rogers with the Train Coalition at Santa Fe Depot. I want to give my immediate concerns from looking at the limited information that's been made available. SANDAG needs to compare like items and not bundle components together that aren't the same. It makes for a misleading comparison. The people mover around the airport should be a standalone project like the Atlanta Airport People Mover. Typically, these are airport-funded projects. The car rental center has the greatest ridership in the study, and combining it with SANDAG connections to downtown is vastly distorting the comparison with the trolley and the bus alternatives. The cost should also be separated to make a fair comparison. On the summary table 1-3, the reduced VMT should also be separated for the car rental segment. If SANDAG's biggest VMT reduction is from eliminating the bus to the car rental center, then that is misleading again. I also guarantee community objections if you choose a raised train like Genesee down Pacific
Your time
Highway.
has
That's a
expired.
big eyesore blocking both visual.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time has expired. We do need to move on to the next person. Elaine Avigdor, you can step up to the podium, followed by Christina Marquez.
Good morning. So my name is Alan Avigdor. I'm with the Train Coalition at the Santa Fe Depot. Fair comparisons must be made for the different components of the different proposals. Ridership numbers, cost, and VMT reductions have to be made clear to each separate situation to evaluate the cost benefits of each proposal. So far, that is lacking. How much of the ridership costs and VMT reductions are related to the downtown sections of the proposals? How much is related to bringing in people from around the region? It appears that the people also, does this project include costs to build a new building for the port as a major transit center? There are huge differences in the ridership numbers, cost, and VMT reductions between the SANDAG and MTS proposals, which are impossible to decipher because of the way the current study has lumped different components together. Please provide a better breakdown with comparisons of like items at the fall presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Christina Marquez, followed by Will Moore.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chair Elo Rivera and board members. Christina Marquez on behalf of IBEW Local 569 and 3600 union electricians and power professionals. I'm here today in support of advancing this project forward, initiating the EIR, and helping our region meet its climate action goals. An air transit connector will reduce vehicle miles traveled, reduce average daily trips, reduce traffic congestion at the airport, reduce GHGs, and significantly advance our progress toward our regional climate action goals. In addition, 569 is in support of automated people mover system. Among other things, it provides the greatest GHG reduction of the options evaluated. In closing, IBEW 569 is committed to working with our partners to achieve GHG reductions, increase the connectivity of our region, and ensure that those who use the San Diego International Airport, whether a resident or a tourist, have a world-class experience getting to and from the airport. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Will Moore, who will be followed by Catherine Rhodes.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Will Moore with Circulate San Diego, the policy director and counsel at Circulate. The Circulate is a think tank that supports good transit alternatives and a vibrant community. We are here to support either the trolley or the people mover concepts. There are two real sets of priorities here. First, it has to be frequent. It has to be luggage friendly. And so that gets the flyers to the airport, and it has to have times that accommodate airport workers. So that's kind of the first category of things that are going to make this work best. The second item, simple and more likely to get funded with the fewest ties to big projects that might not happen in the future. So we're encouraged to see some of these ideas here, but it can be implemented in phases, but let's get something off the ground and get people to the airport as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
I think our next speaker is Catherine Rhodes, and after Catherine, we'll go to the folks on Zoom and start with Corey Schumacher.
Here it is. Great. Hi. So what I wanted to talk about, of course, I like the automated people mover concepts 1 through 5. It could literally be funded 100% by the airport. The billions of dollars, not 350 million chump change. Since so far, since 2019, Hassan actually got the airport to finally say they're going to give you $350 million. 4 years later, they've given you $0. So what this beautiful video here is something called cut and cover. It's a cheap way. It's not tunneling. Tunneling is expensive. It has fire dangers, but this cheap cut and cover way is it hasn't totally been looked into. What I'm talking about is not doing the aerial columns. Aerial columns on liquefiable soils would be similar to what happened in San Francisco Bay. You can actually put this project through
Thank you,
areas
Catherine.
where
Your
there's
time
active
has
fault,
expired.
just like Los Angeles. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Corey Schumacher. And after Corey, we'll have 5 remaining speakers and Evan Strawn will be after Corey.
Thank you very much. My name is Corey Schumacher, and on behalf of the 3,600 union electricians and power professionals of IBEW 569, I'm speaking today in support of moving this project forward, advancing our region's climate action goals, and creating more good jobs for San Diego workers. Automated airport transit connectors at international airports like the one I just used with ease to get from Seattle Tacoma International Airport to a business conference offer an efficient, easy-to-use, high-frequency transit connection for residents and visitors. It's frustrating not having a similar option at home. IBEW 569 is supportive of the all-electric automated people mover system, given the noted benefits and the fact that it's a consistent, convenient, high-frequency mode of connecting to transit that decreases traffic congestion, offers travelers more choice, and increases freedom of movement around our county. It's time we invest in a regional transit connection to and from the San Diego airport, which will generate good local jobs for San Diego's workers. Please support the advancement of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Evan Strawn, who will be followed by Karina Contreras.
Good morning, Vice Chair Elo Rivera and Board of Directors. My name is Evan Strawn, and I'm here representing the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, whose mission is to make the San Diego region the best place to live and work. I want to start by thanking SANDAG staff for having this briefing and preparing the report with different options for the airport transit connection. The Chamber also applauds SANDAG and the regional airport authorities' collaboration to create a transit-ready area around the airport in advance of the opening of the airport's new Terminal 1. The Chamber recognizes the deep need for a regional transit connection to San Diego International Airport. An airport transit connection would bring San Diego in line with other major urban centers and be fitting for the 8th largest city in the US by population. This connection can provide much needed traffic relief, ensuring that San Diego residents and visitors have a positive experience with the airport and are encouraged to return to San Diego for business and travel. We encourage the Board of Directors to deliberately and carefully consider the different options and keep in mind the benefit of easy airport access for our region's economy. Thank you, and we look forward to being actively engaged in the planning process.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karina Contreras, who will be followed by David Grubb.
Hello, my name is Karina Contreras, Climate Action Campaign's Transportation Policy Advocate. I just want to speak in favor of connecting folks better to such a regional asset. The airport definitely has needed this for a long time. The automated people mover is tried and true. It works all over the world and it will work here in San Diego. But we also have to keep in mind that we need to build out our active transportation infrastructure so that folks that are connecting to the automated people mover can do so in a safe manner, depending on where they're coming from. Thank you very much. Excited to see this move forward.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be David Grubb, who will be followed by Calvin Barrios. David, you're self-muted at the moment.
Good morning, Vice Chair Elo Rivera and board members. David Grubb, Transportation Chair, Sierra Club San Diego, expressing our support for the study of options for improving the connection of our airport to the rest of our transportation network, not just for travelers, but also for the people who work there. The network effect says that when you connect a node to a network, it adds value to every other node in the network. Improving the connection to the airport will add value across the entire system, way beyond that one connection. This will be a significant investment, but with a potentially very high payback. So it is important to get it right. We applaud your staff for their thorough investigation of the alternatives. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Kelvin Barrios, who will be followed by Jordan Latchford, and Jordan will be our final speaker.
Good morning, board members. My name is Kelvin Barrios. I'm the Director of Government Affairs with Laborers Local 89. I'm here speaking on behalf of our 4,000 members and my business manager, Valentin Macedo. We're here to support this project and moving this forward. It's something we've been tracking, I think, well over 5 years now. And we know it takes time and it takes time to do these type of studies, but this would be a huge investment in our region and a huge economic driver for years to come. So we're looking forward to seeing this move towards the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Jordan Latchford. You can go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Vice Chairman Elo Rivera and board members. My name is Jordan Latchford, and I'm the Government Affairs Manager at the Downtown San Diego Partnership, here to express our support for the airport transit connection, particularly emphasizing the importance of the southbound routes through downtown. The Downtown San Diego Partnership is deeply committed to fostering the economic prosperity and cultural vibrancy of our city's downtown area. With the ongoing Terminal 1 expansion, the urgency of establishing a regional connection to the airport has become vital to accommodate the surging demand. Ensuring efficient transportation options for local residents and tourists traveling to and from the airport remains a top priority for the Downtown Partnership. This is especially critical for the downtown community, given its high density of housing, job opportunities, existing transit riders, and popular tourist destinations. We urge you to consider the Downtown Partnership in future plans and look forward to supporting airport transit connections that enhance movement to downtown. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. That concludes the public commenters on this item.
All right, thank you to our public commenters. We will now go to board member questions and comments. As a reminder, this is a informational item with no action required. We will begin with our Airport Authority representative, Mr. Cabrera.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Airport Authority appreciates the hard and consistent and collaboration on the airport transit connection with SANDAG staff. Thanks to Ryan and Victoria for a great job in the presentation. This has been going on for a number of years, as everybody knows. Our teams have worked closely to ensure the technical assistance is provided and that none of the concepts proposed today conflict with the new Terminal 1, roadways under current construction, or airport operations generally. The Airport Authority's goal throughout this process has been to provide enhanced transit connections to San Diego International Airport so that our 9,000 employees and 24 million annual passengers can access our region's transit system to and from the airport. We know that many of our passengers and employees want better transit access because it's shown by the steady monthly increase in ridership on our free electric shuttle, the from Old Town Transit Center to the airport, San Diego Flyer. And Vice Chair Huebner, that is something that our friends from the north can take advantage of today, hop off on Old Town and then take a free electric shuttle right to the airport. So I'm pleased to see that today's presentations that there are concepts that appear constructible, financeable, achievable, something that we always like to see, and which will be a win for airport passengers and employees as well as the entire region. I know that this will be presented to our board in September, so we're looking forward to seeing that, and I'll bring back whatever comments our board has to you then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we will now go to Vice Mayor Molina.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very excited to hear all of this information today. Thank you very much, Mr. Kohut and Ms. Stackwick, for this information. Also, thank you for my briefing. I know I asked a lot of questions and I do appreciate the information. I just want to applaud the work that's being done here and the notion that we will be, we have the potential to give the public another option to get to the airport. And I've heard many comments say, how do you expect people to get on a bus or on a trolley with all of their luggage? And I want to let you know that it is doable. I did it many, many times when I was commuting to Oakland and then hopping on the BART to get to my final destination in Berkeley. Most recently, my entire family and I did it in New York. We used, from LaGuardia, we used public transportation. They had one shuttle down over to somewhere in New York where we took the subway. into the heart of Times Square. It is doable. And we had our carry-ons as well as our checked luggage. It's not easy, but it is doable. So I just want to offer to people, people that automatically want to say, no, this is crazy. You know, if you're traveling with like skis or equipment, you know, obviously you still have the option to get to the airport the way you have managed to do all this time. This is just another option. Using public transportation is another option for the public to get to the airport. And I think this is much needed, and it is super important that this gets support. Lastly, I want to mention, it sounds to me fantastic to have the ability to do this at the Santa Fe Depot option, using that option. Again, being in New York, it was fantastic to be at Grand Central Station, the terminal there. And then we made very good use of the Oculus Transportation Hub, which is this amazing, I don't know, it looked to me like the inside of a whale skeleton, but it was this station at the World Trade Center that got us to Jersey because we were staying in Jersey. And it was, I mean, we made very good use of that transit station. I want something like that here in San Diego. We can do that. And I think putting this connecting it with Santa Fe Depot allows us to extend the reach of, given that there's so much infrastructure there already that would connect you to the entire region. So my question here has to do for staff. You mentioned follow-up or the upcoming steps, the environmental review piece of this that's coming up would benefit from removing some of the options, some of these other alternative options. And I know that there's a lot of concepts here, and there's a lot of support for that Santa Fe Depot people mover. At what point do you remove all of the other options and then you just move forward with the one that is most feasible, most financially feasible, all of that?
I think where we are right now is we wanted to develop all the, important homework and technical information to really be able to look thoughtfully at these concepts. We're hoping that this is starting a broader conversation, a public conversation about where the region should invest its resources to connect the airport. We intend to, move on from this meeting, go out and meet with other public stakeholder, go to their boards. We're already on the agenda for September 7th at the airport. And then from that public conversation, return to this board and frankly ask for direction from this board on what we want to advance into the formal environmental process. What is the preferred project? What would be the alternatives that we should continue studying? And then that environmental process, we would develop more detailed information that would be part of the administrative record of an environmental document that this board would then be able to review, evaluate, and make a decision on a final project.
Thank you very much. I highly appreciate all of the public commenters that did also offer support for the people mover at Santa Fe Depot, because I would agree with that assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Molina. All right. We got several more requests to speak to this item. Just a little bit of meeting management. We very much do need to deal with the closed session items that we have on our agenda today. So I want to make sure that we get in there and we have a quorum so that we can decide as a board whether or not to take action on those items. With that, I'm going to ask that folks in the conversation here limit their comments to around 3 minutes or so. That'll allow us to get into closed session in time. We will go now to Councilmember Gasterland.
Great, thank you. I will be swift. I'd like to draw your attention to table 5.4 and table 5.5 in this study. These tables have the percent change in average daily traffic compared to the No Project baseline. And it also has the daily ridership on concept, but it's only for concepts 3, 4, and 5. And I will offer a story. Yesterday, I dropped off a visiting colleague from another place at the airport and drove them there. The gates were down on the east side of the tracks for a full 15 minutes without going up, a full 15 minutes. The traffic backed up so much that we then had to wait 10 minutes to get through the lights. So a half hour nearly extra because of the gates up and down. So that is a problem. And that goes to my real comment, which is, What is the problem we're trying to solve? We're trying to solve people who use the airport being able to get there efficiently and people who fly into the airport to get to where they need to go in the county, and the people who work there, both groups of people. I'm not seeing that in this study. If our goal is to reduce airport traffic congestion, we need to know what is the web of trips between the airport and all over the county. I'm hearing vehicle miles traveled. That's a great metric. The state has said we need to reduce our vehicle miles traveled, but that should not be the driver for what we choose to do in this airport connection. The driver needs to be what we heard from some of the comments that we had here. How do we serve the people of the region? How do we reduce the time to the airport and reduce this variability? We need to keep Old Town on the map, the north connector there. And we also need, this is for Gil, we need that people mover on the airport so that people can be dropped off at the rental car station, and that rental car station needs to be connected to Old Town. That's what's needed for the entire county north of where the airport is. I love the South County solution. It looks great. It's really going to help people in National City and Chula Vista a lot, but we can't leave out all of the northern part of our county. We just can't. I hope I was in 3 minutes.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, we will now go to Mayor Jones.
Thank you so much, Chair. Okay, so first question is, where do we find in the regional transportation plan the actual people mover? Because I haven't been able to locate it. Do you know where that is? I have it with me, so if you refer to the page, I'll be able to find it.
I don't have the regional plan in front of me, but I know that the regional plan does reference an airport transit connection.
Yes,
The
but a
mode is
people
not-
mover specifically.
Yeah, at this point, we're evaluating different types of airport transit connections, which may be a people mover, maybe a trolley, maybe bus. You know, the regional plan, I don't believe when it was developed, had made that decision either. And so that's the question before the board today.
I guess I'm very confused. How we would move forward on studying something that we've actually never voted on?
Well, I mean, this board back in 2019 created, a project to study an airport connection along with a central mobility hub. The agency has been studying that very problem. And today is really a result of a lot of that work. We are now presenting alternatives on how to actually create that fast, reliable, efficient airport connection in furtherance of that, that project and in furtherance of the regional plan.
So I guess, just looking at the study and whatnot, it's very expensive to have a people mover. It's very expensive. The options range all the way up to almost $6 billion or something crazy like that, from like $1 billion up to $6 billion. This is not funny money. This is actual money. So I guess the specific cost, we don't really know, apparently. We don't know what the benefits, this is all very unclear to me of what the actual cost, what the benefits would be. And I don't feel like this has been transparent at all. Adding things to or changing things, the day before something, when it comes to us is a bit of an issue. I guess, are there any local funds that are planned to be used for this?
We are still working within the allocation provided by the board and the capital improvement budget.
The $40 million?
It's largely federalized, FTA federal dollars. There is some money that we received from an unrelated lawsuit a long time ago, but yeah, I don't believe there's a lot of transnet in this, if that's the question.
I'm talking about the ultimate building of this.
I think what we're trying to do here is identify potential projects that the board can choose to pursue. We would then, develop an environmental clear and make shovel ready, and we'd go out and look for federal or, for construction funding.
So I guess I'm very unclear okay, so we're not taking a vote here today, but we're providing direction essentially, because if we're not bringing up something, then it's just happening. When you talk about, moving toward the environmental, that means we're going to be spending money. We still have things that we've already actually approved. Like for instance, I'll just throw out the 78 environmental. Why would this move forward ahead of the 78 environmental when we've actually voted on a direction on that?
Mayor Jones, for the benefit of the board members, none of the work we're doing is without the authorization of this board. This board in 2019 authorized $40 million to start the work on airport connection. So this is an action of the board. We're not moving in our own. So just to clarify, again, October 2019, part of the $600 million RTIP, Regional Transportation Improvement Program, the board appropriated, this board in this room appropriated $40 million to study a potential for airport connection, including studying a potential for a central mobility hub. So that's that. Now, part of every project, whether it's the 78 or the 5 or the mid-coast, you do the planning work, you do the environmental work, you get authorized in the budget by the board, and then when the decision comes to how to go, the board is going to decide. But you're saying, how did we approve this? You did approve this. You did put the money in the budget. You did say specifically to spend it on, and that's what we're doing. We're doing this, and we have, by the way, this year, this is, I don't know, it's probably the third time we come here and talk about this. So this is not like staff is driving this without the board authorization.
Okay, so I guess my point would be that I have a lot of questions just based on a lot of the discussion that was given here today. I personally would like for us to come back and provide staff with direction on what we actually spend money on environmental before we actually spend money on the environmental. I think having a clear, reasonable expectation as to this is what we want you to do. And by the way, I've lived in San Diego County, but I think I moved here in, when I was 6 months old. So literally, I mean, I understand the importance of this. I just want to make sure that we're not, and I say this all the time. I don't like to spend money on things that we haven't actually voted on. I don't think we should be spending money in a frivolous way. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily happening, but for me, I would prefer that we would come back at a later date with a clear direction from the board as to what direction we move in, and then spend the money on environmental, not pushing it ahead of other things. Because like, for instance, we never actually voted on a people mover. It seems like it's really expensive in my opinion. And then, the list of, I have a whole list of things that I'm thinking I'm sorry, it's like really messy. So I have to find my way. And so what we've already spent that $40 million on, what we expect the actual projects to cost to come back to us. And then we as a board can make a decision of an actual direction to actually spend money on environmental. I don't think it makes sense for us to move forward on environmental that we haven't actually voted on something. I feel like we should definitely come back.
Mayor Jones, I feel like because we are up against some timing issues today. I feel like we're kind of circling time and time again on the same issue here. I heard Director Luqadda say that they are acting, that this is brought to us based on actions. Everything, the work that was done was funded by actions taken by this board in 2019. I don't know if anyone's challenging the veracity of that. Today's discussion is about quite literally getting additional direction from the board so that they can move forward in such a way that is consistent with the general will of this board, not necessarily through an action item. Do you have any additional points that you'd like to make? We have a few more folks in the queue.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So being that we're providing direction, I would make a motion that we would bring this back at a later.
We're not going to be entertaining motions on this item. It's an informational item only.
Well, I am very uncomfortable as to voting or not voting on something and providing direction without actually providing direction and without taking a vote. I think that we should not be spending money on environmental that we haven't actually directed staff specifically to do. So are you saying, Mr. Kirk, that I cannot make a motion for us to come back with this item with a vote for us to provide direction to staff to spend money on environmental?
I don't think I've said anything yet.
No, I know. I'm asking you. Is that
Okay, ultimately the chair per your bylaws has oversight of the administrative affairs of the board, including management of the agenda. So based upon what is agendized here today, I believe that the chair is in order to say today is information only and to direct how this item will come back to the board.
And Mayor Jones, just so you know, my best friend in the world could make a motion and I would say the same thing. I want to make sure that our Chair Vargas, that she has an opportunity to weigh in on the agenda. I also know that there was not an action agendized today. I think the public deserves to know when we will be taking action items versus simply discussing something. So I think the point has been made clear. You've provided your feedback here. We will now move to, let's see, who's next in the queue?
So I guess for a point of clarification, Chair, you're saying that you would not entertain a motion for
I would
us
not.
to.
I not only would I not, I am not. So we're going to move on past that. You are welcome to contact Chair Vargas and see if she would like to docket that at the next meeting. That will be her call. We are not taking an action during this meeting on this item. With that, we'll move on to Councilmember Fisher.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate it. I'll try to keep my questions pretty quick. How many employees currently work at the airport and how many are expected with the expansion?
9,000 employees work at the airport.
And with the expansion?
I don't have that number. Okay. I don't think it would expand dramatically from that.
Okay, because as I look at this, obviously living in the South County, I wonder how many of these of the employees at the airport could get there, and also the connection coming from the south. The trolley service that would get you down to the Santa Fe Depot is quite slow, and so I think it'd be a little bit not as productive as I would like to see. So maybe some improvements there I think would be good. And then, you talked about the people mover and being in different airports and that type of thing. I've been in Atlanta. I've been in that one. It seems like it's very much self-contained within the airport. And we're talking about taking the people mover and moving in and out of the airport. Are there any models that you've studied that would have the same amount of length of a people mover that we're kind of looking at this point?
Not necessarily a similar project, but a similar funding program. So Midcoast was funded through the FTA New Starts program. And based on their criteria from the federal government, we're able to get 50% of the money from the federal government, and then 50% comes from a local match. The airport has put in over $300 million. So we have this unprecedented opportunity now to take advantage of that. So with this money coupled with additional funding from the region, we believe that we can fully fund this program and adhering to the criteria for FTA, which basically doesn't allow for paying of a project that's strictly on airport properties. So we are trying our best to put together a competitive project that meets all of the federal criteria and maximizes the leveraging that we have in the region with our financial resources.
All right. Well, I mean, besides the point, I'm just curious if there are any other people movers that move that far away from the airport, going to whether it's the Santa Fe Depot that far south, or up to the Old Town Trolley Station. It seems like a significant distance, that's all.
Yeah, and there are other examples in the country of systems that connect, APM systems that connect the airport to other transit, LAX and San Francisco. And in fact, both of those systems are longer than what we're proposing here today.
Okay. And then, my final thought is that, as I said there, I was thinking it takes so long to get it would take far, to get the trolley, the connections to get to the airport. Because it only takes me 25 minutes from my home, but that's when I drop somebody off and I always forget the second part of my trip creates my round trip to get back home. And I think that realistically, we should look at total time, to get there, because again, we could say one way is 25 minutes, but technically it's 50 minutes because you have to go back the other way. And so I think for somebody to leave their home, and you know, I'm looking at it like, I would love to be dropped at the Palm Avenue trolley stop and be able to get to the airport, you know, without having to inconvenience somebody or to pay an Uber type driver a significant amount. So, you know, I think there's some benefits that we should be looking at outside of, you know, and again, there's nothing in government. We're all in government. There's nothing that's cheap. Plain and simple, nothing quick, nothing cheap. And if it's good, it's probably not worth having. So I think that, you know, we look at some of the other benefits and kind of expand the horizons of what we're trying to create here. So thanks for all the hard work. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fisher. We will now go to Mayor Krantz.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. This item has allowed me to wax a little nostalgic, if you would, please. I was serving on the North County Transit District Board as the chair in 2018, when an important conversation was, you know, had about the Navwar site and Grand Central Station and how to connect transit to the airport. And from the perspective of North County, the most important thing was to make sure that it was no more than a 2-seat ride. So coaster to a vehicle. I preferred Old Town, but the depot would be fine. There's never going to be a coaster stop in between Old Town and the depot. So those were the two choices. I think that this concept, as studied, makes it very clear to me that the depot to the airport is the right way to go with an APM. And so I look forward to the fall when we will have further refined these concepts and had additional conversation. I know there was a slide, it's slide 27. And in the fall, we will have an update to the board prior to advancing concept alternatives into environmental phase. So I don't think it needs a motion because it's already planned to come back to us before we move into the environmental phase. My wife, her work situation has made her a frequent flyer. We make 2 trips a week to the airport. It is painful, and I look forward to having a reasonable public transit option. She may never become a transit rider, but I think there are plenty of people in North County who will. It is also really unfortunate that this planning couldn't have kept up with the work that's being done to improve Terminal 1. The tremendous amount of work that's going on down there has been fascinating to watch progress. I think it's a tribute to the labor agreements that we have in place that has helped that work to unfold in a way that just is mind-boggling. It allows the construction geek in me to really kind of enjoy the trip down to the airport just to see how far they've come. But again, this study, I think, seems to leave us with a pretty obvious choice, and that's the southern route. And it has expansion capabilities going to the convention center, which I think is important as well. But for now, taking advantage of the funding that has been offered by the Airport Authority and other federal opportunities, I think it's really critical that we focus on that APM from the depot to the airport.
Thank you, Mayor Krantz. We will now go to our North County Transit Rep, Ms. Edson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the great presentation. I have 2 really brief yes/no questions and then a comment. So on where it says passenger convenience regional trip origins for APM concepts, it shows Carlsbad with 10-minute reduction, but UCSD with 12-minute reduction. USD is quite a bit closer. Is that longer due to trolley only connection from UCSD?
It's all based on trip choice from the regional plan model, from, you know, those kind of pre-selected destinations. It, you know, by providing a new transit option to connect, you know, the airport to a node like Santa Fe Depot, then it ties back to how that person from UCSD would get into that system versus somebody up in Carlsbad.
Okay.
And so
In Carlsbad, you're hopping on a coaster, UCSD, you're hopping on a trolley.
trolley, so there's a little difference there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on the overall ridership screen, it shows concept 5 South Leg option has quite, as you covered, a large ridership increase over the other options.
Mhm.
Is that due to employees who primarily come from South County to work at the airport?
That's certainly part of it. You know, there are 9,000 employees, a good number of whom live in the southern part of the region that would take advantage of a system like this. Plus, if you're only doing a south leg, you know, you can do more frequent headways than if you do north and south. So that kind of grabs more transit users.
Awesome. Thanks for those answers. And then for my comments, NCTD's priority is ensuring a connection to Coaster and Amtrak Pacific Surfliner services, providing transit access for residents and visitors from throughout Southern California is critical to the success of the airport transit connection. Santa Fe Depot is serviced by all transit modes, MTS trolley and bus, and CTD Coaster and Amtrak Pacific Surfliner. People Mover Concepts 2 through 5 propose connections to this station. Concept 1 does not connect to Santa Fe Depot. NCTD's priorities were expressed in a letter to SANDAG and Caltrans regarding the Central Mobility Hub Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. That's a mouthful. Letter was dated June 5th, 2023. And in this letter, NCTD notes that the CMHCP proposes a new transit center at the Port of San Diego building on Pacific Highway. And that's one of the options studied for the airport transit connection, and urges SANDAG and Caltrans to consider anchoring the proposed airport transit connection to either Old Town Transit Center or Santa Fe Depot, existing transit centers serviced by all transit modes. If the Port Transit Center or another location between Old Town and Santa Fe Depot is chosen to provide the airport transit connection, NCTD would need to conduct further analysis to determine the feasibility of making an additional stop within a short distance. Analysis conducted through the development of the 2018 California State Rail Plan indicate that regional rail services are recommended to stop at intervals between 3 to 6 minutes, and intercity rail services, including Amtrak Pacific Surfliner, are recommended to stop at intervals between 20 to 30 minutes. The distance between Old Town and Santa Fe Depot is approximately 3 miles. Additionally, the CMHCP graphics depict the potential for a tunnel through downtown to the new Port Transit Center. NCTD would like to highlight the need for the design of any potential tunnel or undergrounding to accommodate both freight and passenger rail. Those are my NCTD comments. Speaking as a resident, and this is a long time coming and is needed in San Diego, as Councilmember Molina mentioned. I think this is and Council or Mayor Kranz. This has really been a long time coming. I traveled frequently throughout my career and cannot wait to get better airport connectivity. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Edson. All right, we will now go to Deputy Mayor Keim.
Thank you. I just a couple of questions for staff, just to make sure. So on the high end of the most expensive option, we're at 6.7 billion roughly, right? And then the high end of the lowest option, we're 70 million for the bus. The high end of the cheapest option, the bus, correct?
Yeah, there's a bus option that's roughly 70 million, and the highest cost APM option, which would north and south in a tunnel, is close to 7 billion.
Okay,
yes.
so I just want to do the highest of the highest of the highest and lowest, because I know just based on my experience, every project we do, it always comes out the highest or more. But for me, I have to justify about 10 minutes of time savings for $6.7 billion for my residents in Oceanside. That's just a little under what it would cost to double track the Sprinter. And so is that the cost benefit to me to support that is challenging. And just, I have to think about that. Is this really going to make that big of an impact on my residents' lives? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Keim. One thing that might be helpful for Steph, and this is probably going to be inexact at best, but we see the total number that it will cost. And then we think about the impact for our specific cities that we're representing. Those, but we're not seeing the cost proportional to our cities. So one thing that might be useful is to know how much of that total cost is being carried by any one jurisdiction, if at all, because it feels like we're only presented with apple and orange comparisons in terms of cost versus impact.
Chair, just for the benefit of everyone. So like I think Victoria and Ryan tried to highlight, our hope is when we get this project cleared environmentally and designed, that most of the money will come from federal and state governments. When we built the mid-coast, we had $1 billion from the federal government, but we need to position this project to compete. The airport has been a great partner, put $300 million on the table, but I believe when we clear this can compete really well. So the cost for the cities will be some, but will not be significant.
Understood. I think that's the part that's important for us to be able to, that's part of the communication to our constituents, which is how much are we bringing to the region in terms of funding. And again, there's the total cost, which can be eye-popping for sure. I don't know about the other folks on this board. If billions of dollars are going to be put to use by the federal government for these sort of purposes, I sure as hell would prefer them be in the San Diego region than Tulsa. No offense to Tulsa, but would rather than be here. We've got one more comment, Mayor Minto. Oh yeah, and then Commissioner Naranjo will wrap it up.
Thank you very much. I kind of want to, make some comments regarding what Mayor Jones was saying, because when I look at moving forward, and it specifically calls out the APM South Leg option. Oh, by the way, I'm very much in support of doing this, doing a project. But the fact that we can't make a motion here today regarding what our preference is on the environmental side of this, and the fact that what it says is we get the report and then we get another update. And then it seems like, like in my city, we vote on all this stuff. So I think that we need more information. I would like more information. Certainly sound like Mayor Jones wanted more information. And so I understand not making a motion to take any action on this today. However, Counselor, I think an appropriate motion that can be made today is to lay this item on the table to the next meeting of August 11th and have more information given to the board so that it can give maybe better direction. I think that's because it's not actually taking action on this, but it's setting it for the next meeting.
The chair approves the agenda. We've empowered the chair through the rules of this body to create the agenda. And I want to make sure that Chair Vargas has an opportunity to weigh in on when she thinks it'd be most appropriate for us to have another conversation about this, and to make sure that she has an opportunity to discuss with you all about what it is, what expectations you have for what would be presented. I don't think that and others might disagree. We've elected a chair. I'm chairing this meeting, but I'm not the chair. And I want to make sure that she approved of this agenda. I did not approve of this agenda. I want to make sure that she's able to utilize her authority as chair to approve the additional agendas that we have moving forward as well.
Well, it's not very.
If I may, Vice Chair and members of the board. So at the very conclusion of the presentation, what we said is that all indications are based upon this study that the South Leg is probably the best option, but that we are going to come back before we start environmental because there's still additional work to be done. And we wanted to get all of your input today on your thoughts on the study. What other things we should be looking at? And I think that's what you're hoping to glean from this informational item, and that we would come back. There's not a set date for us to do that, but that is the plan.
Right. And I think So one of the things that I've heard, and I'm sure staff heard, was that there are multiple members of this board who want more information, and they're nodding in the affirmative, and I believe that they will do. And can we get a commitment to reach out to Mayor Minto and Mayor Jones to ensure that they have the information that they want and need whenever Chair Vargas decides to docket the next discussion of this item?
I will reach out to them immediately.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You know what, also, on a side note, for John, can you bring back maybe to the next meeting or something, highlighted in the board policy where the chair is the only person that can put anything on the agenda? Or I think we follow Robert's Rules of Order, and where Robert's Rules of Order do not apply to laying something on the table or things of that nature.
So your agenda management process is dictated primarily by your board policies. Where you have an executive committee meeting and a normal course of things, the executive committee sets the agenda, approves it, subject to board ratification. However, your board policies also recognize that there are situations where issues may come up after that most recent approval by the executive committee. And in that situation, the chair of the board, together with the CEO, have the authority to make modifications to the agenda regarding items that have arisen or situations that have arisen since that approval by the executive committee and the board of directors. And so to the extent that you're looking for this to come on at a meeting after your next executive committee meeting, that can be raised at the executive committee to request that that be placed on the agenda. But to the extent that you're looking to have something placed on an agenda prior to your next executive committee meeting, that's something that's within the specific authority of the chair and the CEO.
What board policy is that?
Board policy 17, I think specifically, authorizes a CEO with the concurrence of the chair to make modifications to the agenda regarding issues that have arisen since the last approval by the executive committee.
I'm going to have to look into that. I didn't know we had that kind of.
So it's a combination of you have primary authority as the board to set the agenda, but in unusual circumstances, that's the chair and the CEO who have that authority.
Well, this really isn't an unusual circumstance. It just.
The unusual circumstance is just it's an issue that comes up since the executive committee's most recent adoption for a meeting before the next executive committee approval of an agenda. That's the only thing unusual about it, just the timing.
Okay.
All right, we've got a few more requests to speak. I'm going to ask that they be specific to this item. We do really need to get into closed session. That's important. And then item 9, we've got a few items lingering out there. One of them that has an impact on multiple jurisdictions here at SANDAG. And so we'll go to Councilmember Shu and then Mayor Grant. Oh, I'm so sorry, Sandy. Yeah, we'll go to Commissioner Naranjo first, and then we will go to Councilmember Shu.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Staff, I just want to thank you again for this report. It's exciting to see the innovative, sustainable mobility options. I just only have one request, and one request is that within the timeline, if you can present to the Board of Port Commissioners, because I would like to have the discussion with my colleagues at the dais. So that's only one request I have. Thank you.
We would be happy to present.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Shu.
I think, this item today is simply to provide additional information for staff, for them to come back to us for further decisions. They're not expending anything more than what's already been authorized by this board. And my input is, I like people movers, but I just want to end with one thought: who flies? How often do they fly? What population are they really serving? I'm all for supporting the employees there, but at some day when we get really serious about reducing greenhouse gases, we're going to have to drastically reduce the amount of flying we do. So just in my thoughts on that. But in terms of who should be paying for this, it should be the users, it should be the airport authority. They should foot at least 50%, if not more, of this, and they have the funding to do it. So take that for advisement as we go forward with this project. I think we have many other projects that need to be done with federal and state funding. So I'm for letting the people who actually fly and maybe the employers pay for the system, not overburden the rest of us in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shu. Mayor Kranz, will go back to you, and then Mayor Jones, I see you've got another request to speak.
Yeah, could staff speak to the need to delay until the fall, the update that would advance concept alternatives to this environmental phase?
This is the beginning of the conversation. So we want to go out to the entire region and talk to the community and garner additional input and get your feedback so that we can add that into the study information, add it into the data points, and come back to you with some more refined options. And hopefully that will allow us to move forward into the environmental process at that time. But really, we're really just excited to release this information, get this study out there, and generate some good conversation about the art of what could be.
Okay, anything you could do to accelerate would be great because it's desperately needed. And I appreciate that we don't want to short circuit the community conversations, but this has been something that's been kicked around a really long time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. Mayor Jones?
I was just hoping for clarification. I just started writing you an email and trying to send it. I want to know where the board policy and the specific section, it shows that the chair has that authority. When we're just
Well,
trying
we
to get
can-
in
yeah,
information, I
and-
really am
and-
not
and
even.
No one's, I think this is part of the problem. No one's pushing back on the request for information. We have a commitment directly from staff to me and to you to reach out to find out what information you're seeking so that they can be provided to you with ample runway. The information is going to be provided. We've said that we will circle back with Chair Vargas so she can make a decision as to when she wants to agendize the conversation that you're looking to have, to see if that will be included in the conversation that we're already planning on having, or needs to be a standalone conversation. No one's saying no to the request information. I'm saying no to the request for a vote. We're not doing it. We need to wrap up the conversation on this item. We're going to move forward now because we've got business that we need to conduct, and it would be irresponsible at this point for us to delay that any further. So with that in mind, we will close discussion of this item and move on. Thank you so much, Victoria and Ryan, for your
I'm
work.
sorry, Chair, could I make sure that we have one clarification in that, and that we have a specific cost and benefits when that is coming back?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I
Yes.
believe that conversation could absolutely have happened in the follow-up conversation that Victoria committed to having with you in public in front of the rest of the board right now. All right.
Thank you.
So we pulled 3 items from the consent agenda, 8, 9, and 10. I believe it was 8, 9, and 10, right?
Yes.
We're not going to get to 8 and 10 today. So there is a question for the board in terms of how we want to deal with item 9. If we require a presentation for that item, that presentation is going to have to come after closed session because it's just from a prioritization standpoint, we've got to get into closed session. If we do not require a presentation, we may be able to dispense with that now. I wanted to give Colleen an opportunity to let I'm sure everyone's reviewed the materials, but give Colleen an opportunity to weigh in or to share which cities would be impacted by not taking action on that item today.
Thank you, Chair. So just very quickly, item 9 is the RTIP amendment. And given that you had pulled this item, we thought it could end up being postponed. We wanted to make it very clear what the impacts would be if you didn't approve it today. So there are 2 tribal projects, one that includes straightening some curves on 76. There's also an intersection at Willows Road. So those 2 would be delayed by, say, 6 weeks if you took this up at your next meeting. There's also pass-through Transnet funding to several local jurisdictions that are included in this RTIP. So in Chula Vista, Del Mar, El Cajon, Encinitas, Escondido, Imperial Beach, La Mesa, and San Marcos. We just wanted to make you aware of that. Again, that would just be a 6-week delay in having access to those funds.
Okay, so with understanding the possibility that we will not have quorum after we come out of closed session, no judgment there. Does anyone here require a presentation before we have discussion on item? I'm almost done. Does anyone here require a presentation before we have discussion on item 9, or are you comfortable voting on it based on the materials that were presented in the agenda?
That's why I pulled it. I don't think it will take very long, Chair. I think really we could get through this rather quickly.
So do you require a presentation?
No, not at
Okay.
all. No.
So if we don't require a presentation, does anybody else require a presentation? All right, seeing none, then we will bypass the presentation. We do have to take public comment on this item, though. And if you'd like, Mayor Jones, if you think that question is pertinent and may be of use to the public before they provide public comment, I'm happy to allow you the opportunity to ask that question now.
Yes, so on page 61, I think it's still 61, I had a question because on CAL 278, it originally the 78 was supposed to be HOV lanes, but now it's showing HOV/managed. I believe that is changing from 6 lanes to adding 2 lanes. 4 of those would be managed, and then 2 of those would be converted and then also changed to managed. And that's what I'm trying to find out. So it would be 4 regular lanes. Currently, we have 6 regular lanes. Gosh, sorry. This is now sounding more complicated as I'm saying it in my head or saying it out loud. Okay, so we have 6 free lanes currently. And then we're talking about adding 2 more. So that would be 4 managed and then 4 regular lanes. So we're going to have 2 lanes that we're paying to drive on. I believe that's what I saw this in this or on this. Is that correct? Sorry, I just need clarification on that.
So as part of, we're not going to be starting this project immediately. And as part of the new regional plan, it is looking like we are going to be able to modify the number of managed lanes in that location. And Antoinette, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that. So the number of managed lanes or HOV lanes is not set yet. It's just, it's going to be decided as part of the regional plan exercise.
So maybe if I could just clarify,
Yep.
this is the environmental analysis to look at all the alternatives. So that could include 2 additional lanes. It may only include 1 additional lane. Those could be new lanes. That's what would be determined through the environmental analysis.
Okay, and then on page 123, it says a future mobility hub on the Central Mobility Bikeway on PCH, which is SAN 275. And I was just wondering, does this actually specify where that Central Mobility Hub was? Because I wasn't sure because I didn't think we had voted on it. So maybe it's just a floating number?
It's a term. So I think,
Okay.
you know, what Chair Edson was talking about earlier when she was saying the CMH, CMCP. So we did a corridor plan. It was called the Central Mobility Hub Corridor Plan, and it looked at a much broader area that included a bikeway that would be on Pacific Coast Highway, but it's not necessarily something that's connected to a Central Mobility Hub. It was just
Okay.
part of that Central Mobility Hub study area.
Okay, because I was confused about that. And then on wage, I think just this one last question. On page 127, where it says the first paragraph under Central Mobility Hub and connections, in the second to last sentence, it says and major street space reallocation that is required to transform them from car-centric to people-serving. So it seems like, was this in the original plan? Because I don't remember that exact verbiage. I wasn't able to locate that. It kind of, I don't know, that just seems overreaching to me. It seems like it's trying to say that we're going to change people's behavior. And I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable with that part of the sentence, if that makes sense. But was it in the original one, or is this a change?
This again came out of the corridor studies, just like the last one we were talking about with the bikeway.
Okay. All right. Well, for the record, I don't really approve of that, but I think we need to move this forward. But I wanted those questions clarified. So I would move to approve, Chair.
We need to hear public comment first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Do we have public comment on this item?
We have 1 public comment on this item, Truth, if you'd like to step up to the podium.
Oh, thanks for pulling something. That's great. Sandag's the art of what could be. Well, I'm the art of what is truth. I'm going to say no to adding over $821 million to 21 new projects, including what Becca just mentioned, the toll lanes on the 15, 805, and 78. I don't remember getting to vote on that, and it's not very equitable. It's actually completely discriminative against the middle and the working class. I mean, how could you guys do that? It's horrible. But I know it's just like Rebecca was suggesting there, you know, Hassan, he loves that behavioral change. He said in the San Diego Union Tribune in 2021, quote, "To be truthful, there will not be any expansion of the freeways," end quote. And of course, that was very specifically towards East County, of course. No one likes East County. That's also messed up. What else can I say about this? Oh, well, Rebecca, you don't have to worry because I have tons of money here, right here. It's even color. There's a color to it. I could pay for everything in the region with this. I mean, look, it's even got a pyramid on it. It's perfect.
Thank you. Your time's expired. That concludes the public commenters.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any other member comments on this item? Seeing none, Mayor. So I want to make sure, Mayor Jones, you want to restate your motion? Yeah. Mayor Jones, you want to restate your motion just to make sure we're all in accordance?
Said that I was uncomfortable with that one thing, but I still am going to vote for this. So move it forward as is.
All right, and Deputy Mayor Kime, second. All right, then let's go ahead and vote.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
All right, thank you so much. With that, we will now move to our closed session agenda. Yes, and then folks, there is lunch here as we're moving into closed session. We'll accept public comment on closed session.
Thank you. Truth, if you'd like to make your public comments on the closed session, you can step up to the podium now. I don't think she can hear me.
Oh, it's okay. Nobody's in a rush to hear me. Okay. Who's listening here? Absolutely nobody, but I am beginning anyways, and I will make you listen to me. I will speak really loud, and you will have to hear everything I say. There's a class, item 17, there's a class claim by Carrie McCormick alleging discrimination in the calculation of CalPERS disability retirement benefits. With my research, I found that Carrie already had a CalPERS dispute in Lake County back in 2013, and the judge found she was not permanently disabled or incapacitated from working like she claimed. In item 18, there are 2 written claims filed by Jesse Ortiz and Everett Pantoa alleging damages from personal injuries near the Buena Creek Sprinter Station. But related to justice is equity. And I thought about Sandag's equity statement more, and I realized that the most marginalized group of people, by both action and inaction, by all levels of government, and even by Sandag, is people like me, people who identify as American. Taxation without representation is the definition of inequity, and that's a lot of what we get here, all of you guys, really. And Sean, he never pays attention, but I've been working on the next city council meeting.
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes the public comments on closed session.
All right, so with that, we will now We're good. All right. Do we have anything to report out from closed session, Amberlynn?
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Board of Directors met in closed session regarding item 17 and rejected the claim filed against SANDAG. The Board of Directors also met in closed session regarding item 18 and rejected the claim filed against SANDAG.
All right. Thank you. With that, that concludes our meeting. As a reminder, we're dark in August and our next meeting will be September 8th. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.